you all today. You're partnering with faith communities to improve prevention outcomes, reducing stigma, gaining faith in prevention. We put on these trainings. We, the Southwest Prevention Technology Transfer Center, have an opportunity to provide training and technical assistance to 5 states, and that's the state of Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, New Mexico, and Louisiana, in no certain, order. I'm sure each of those states would say that they are the best state. And so, when I'm with them, I absolutely agree that they are the best state. When I'm at home, I have to say, hey, I'm from Oklahoma, I'm in the best state, but they tell you it's a poor dog who won't wag its own tail. I also want you all to know that the views, opinions, and the content expressed in this product do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, and policies of SAMHSA. Before we get started, I thought that it was important that we hear from our Assistant Regional Administrator, Tracy Murray. A registered nurse for over 10 years with experience in clinical research, epidemiology, and nursing education. She earned her bachelor's in science and nursing degree with honors from Texas Christian University. Soon after, she became the first BSN to PhD graduate at the University of Texas at Tyler. Lieutenant Commander Murray recently completed her master's in public health with a global health emphasis at University of North Texas Health Science Center. In 2017, Lieutenant Commander Murray became a commissioned nurse officer in the U.S. Public Health Service and began her service with the Indian Health Service. She currently serves as the Region 6 Assistant Regional Administrator for the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration in Dallas. As a commissioned officer, Lieutenant Commander Murray is active in the Black Commissioned Officers Advisory Group and Commissioned Officers Association. I want you to also know that she is incredibly active Assistant Regional Administrator, even within the TTC network amongst us. And so we see her as not only a great touchstone for information and a phenomenal liaison between us and SAMHSA, but certainly a fount of information about just a plethora of things related to behavioral and physical health. Lieutenant Commander Tracy Murray, would you please open up your microphone today and turn on your camera so that we can hear from you?
Well, good morning, LaShonda. Can I get a thumbs up that you can hear me okay? Awesome, thank you. So just thank you for the opportunity just to share some opening remarks with you about today's event. And so I just want to say, it takes a village. Have you heard that before? I think most of us have, but how many of us have actually been benefactors of that village, right? So as a child, the whole neighborhood was your family. They celebrated your victories. They corrected you when you were wrong, like you knew good and well you were supposed to be in the house when the street lights came on and somebody in the neighborhood told you you need to get back to your house, right? Or maybe your village is your faith community and they've seen you through every high and every low of life. They never left your side and they are always there to pull you through. That could be your village. And I hope that through today's sessions, you'll see there's an even bigger village and you have a space in it, that you have a role no matter how big or small. 1 Corinthians 12 describes the unity as well as diversity within the body of Christ, where everyone is working toward a common goal or purpose, and that's unity. But how we get there, our individual roles that we play will differ. And John 15:12 tells us to love each other as God loves us. And so I just want to remind you of those things, but also to say healthy people make healthy families, and healthy families make healthy communities. Healthy communities make a healthy nation. And I believe you are all here because you care about the people you serve in your faith community. So today is your opportunity to not only learn about behavioral health prevention, but to take action. So be intentional today. Connect with people and hold each other accountable to do something different with this information. And I just want to end and say, no pressure or anything, but this village, our village, your village is truly counting on you to take action, to take one step, two steps, but a step forward with this information. So I just want to leave you with that. And thank you again for your attendance today. Thank you for the work you're doing, continuing to do, and will do in our region, again, to make a healthy nation by starting with healthy people. LaShonda.
Thank you, Assistant Regional Administrator Tracy Hurd, for those words. Certainly we are here to create a healthy nation, but I love it, the fact that she told us that it started with healthy people. So at that individual, we're learning today how we as individuals can get healthy, and our faith communities, and it spreads to the rest of our communities, can get healthy. I think that this is a lofty goal that many people would say. They'd say, wow, can Lieutenant Commander Murray, can this actually happen? But we certainly know that nothing beats a fail but a try. And so here we are today, making a try. Again, thank you, Lieutenant Commander Murray. So our presenters today, you all, and I'm excited that I get a chance to share with you this amazing lineup, starting with somebody that I not only think of as a mentor and a role model in this work that we do, but up until last week, I considered him a friend. But he promoted me, and he said that I was a sister. I tell him, I've heard other folks say, that we are the CEOs of our life. We get a chance to hire, fire, and promote. And so just on last Friday, I was promoted to sister, to Tracy Johnson. So I appreciate that, my brother, Tracy Johnson. So Mr. Tracy Johnson has over 25 years of experience in substance misuse prevention. He's worked closely with nonprofits, small businesses, and communities, and helping them with community organizing, environmental strategies, strategic planning, substance abuse prevention and coalition building, cultural diversity and effective programming. He leads a project in working with states and communities on effective substance abuse prevention strategies. He has extensive knowledge of SAMHSA's strategic prevention framework and other strategic initiatives. You all may remember him from his work years ago at the Center for the Application of Prevention Technologies, where he led multiple millions of dollars in providing training and technical assistance there. And you also know him now as the Director of Training and Technical Assistance for SheRay and Associates and TTJ. So that is Mr. Tracy Johnson. We also have the pleasure of hearing today from Mr. Carl Alves. Mr. Carl Alves is the President CEO of Positive Action Against Chemical Addiction in New Bedford, Massachusetts, where he directs a multi-service recovery support center and citywide coalition whose mission is to improve the quality of life in New Bedford through substance abuse prevention and treatment strategies. He is also provides training and technical assistance to a host of coalitions and faith-based communities statewide and nationally with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And as also a technical assistance provider for SheRay and Associates. He's a veteran of substance abuse prevention, harm reduction, treatment, and recovery. And as director of a grassroots nonprofit for the past 25 plus years, he understands the challenges and importance of sustaining outcomes, relationships, and funding beyond the life of a grant. And then finally, at the end of the day, you all, well, not at the end of the day, because she's also on our panel, Dr. Katrina White. She has been in the human services field for 25 years as a volunteer or as a professional. Dr. Weiss currently serves as the divisional director of SheRay and TTJ Group, LLC. She obtained a doctorate in education leadership with a focus on cross-cultural leadership and organizational development and design from Xavier University, where she is also an adjunct professor. She's also an associate trainer for Faith Partners, LLC. Currently, she provides board leadership and consultation for Future Promise, a group home for emotionally disturbed adolescents, and she's the founding member of the Wyoming Community in Action. And you also know that she has served as a trainer and consultant for Interact for Health, Faith Partners, and Prevention First. So, and finally, Dr. Weiss is also co-developer of the Building Prevention with Faith, a faith-based substance abuse prevention toolkit that you'll hear a bit more about a little later. And so, like I told you all, we have a phenomenal lineup today that will amaze you. So please get comfortable with the chat box, because we would love to see you asking questions, making comments, raising your hands so that we can open the mics and you all can talk. So please know again that this is not just a one-way conversation. We don't hope to spray and pray that you get something. We certainly want to make sure that we are in conversation and truly in community throughout the day together. Thank you all so much for attending this. I'm going to turn the time over to Mr. Tracy Johnson.
Testing 1, 2, 3. I hope you all can hear me. Thank you, my sister LaShonda, for that awesome introduction of myself and our fellow presenters here today. I want to thank the light names of Tracy, the Lieutenant Commander Tracy Murray. I think you should add another symbol to your name. It should be Reverend, R-E-V, on there, because you spoke so well about the importance of the faith and how using those scriptures to connect us all from your faith was dynamic and was very encouraging for me personally. So I thank you. But welcome you all. Y'all ready to get involved? Y'all ready to do something? Because this is not one of those online workshops where you just hear talking heads like me and other folks. We're going to ask for engagement. We're going to ask for communication. We're going to ask for dialogue. We're going to ask for discussion. So that's really incredibly important for you to know that as well. Let me see. I think I have my access to this. And so the first thing is that we want to really help you summarize the role of faith-based organizations in substance misuse prevention work. The other objective that we want to do today is really hopefully help you explore those strategies for disrupting stigma, because we know stigma has a major role in people's lives, that we want to help you disrupt those stigma against people with substance use disorder and using the faith community to do that. Then we also want to help you identify strategies for getting the faith community and engaging the faith community organizations in your community, because what happens there is where the rubber meets the road. And then finally, we want to be able to identify evidence-based and promising programs, policies, and practices used in the faith community to do good prevention work. And so I just want to know, if you all are ready, just use that symbol on your page to say thumbs up or whatever. Find it at the bottom and say, hey, I'm ready. Are you ready, y'all? Because we're going to get involved. And I start the day out, for some of you who recognize this wording where it says, this is the day. I'll let you finish it on your chat, but this is the day. All right? This is the day. All right. So today's agenda will be that the role of faith communities, we're going to look at the role of faith communities. We're going to be addressing how to address that impact of stigma. We're going to give you some awesome times in between the break, but engage. Look at those words. Now, thank you for those chats, y'all. We're going to talk about the panel discussion. And then we're going to end out. We got a great panel discussion with some awesome people, faith members from around the country, who's going to give you some examples. But then we want them to talk to you and you talk to them. And so there's going to be some opportunities for that. And then we're going to look at prevention programming in faith-based settings. Of course, we will pause for stretch breaks, because y'all don't know about y'all, my bones sometimes need that extra stretch. You know what I mean? And so we're going to pause for stretch breaks during the session, because that's going to be critical. All right. Amen. Amen. So let's go to the next slide presentation, you all. And there's a little delayed break, so forgive me in that. So let's look at that. And thank you all for keep filling that chat out. I appreciate it. You know that verse. and everybody got your own belief that you can successfully engage folks. Thank you, Sister Cara. Thank you, Sister Mary. Thank you, Sister Deb and Sister Lisa, for adding those comments. Keep them coming, Sister Doreen. Thank you. But we know the faith community has played a critical role in what we do. The faith community has always been the ones that have been there and have sort of opened up the opportunities for communities. I don't know about you. Faith communities have done things for celebrations, for consoling, and for celebrating different parts of our lives individually and collectively. Even during this pandemic, the faith community has played a tremendous role in really impacting. So the role of faith is critical, and even in prevention work, the role of faith has a substance, a really unique substance in our lives, and we have to also engage them in this work. Let me do that next slide, and this is where I really want to make sure you all are engaged in this. Let's see here. Sister Mother Teresa has always been saying, has some of the many verses of wisdom that she's always left her in her life, is that faith and action is love, and love in action is service. That's what you all do as prevention folks, and that's what you do as faith leaders. Without service, there cannot be love. Without love, there cannot be faith. And so we know what that means. And true mentee of hers is that Dr. Martin Luther King. He says, take the first step in faith. You don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step. And so when we talk about faith communities, they've had a history of a lot of times leading the way. Faith communities have had a long engagement or legacy, I call it, of addressing societal ills and things that we've seen not only in our country, but abroad as well. And even today, when you think about the role that faith communities have had, put it in the chat box. Let me see what you're saying, because we know faith has had sometimes engaged in addressing societal ills, right? So let's take this for instance, and I want you to chat in the chat box and to answer these questions for me. How did or has the faith community impacted slavery? How did or has the faith community impacted slavery? Put it in the chat box. Let me see what you got to say about that. And don't be surprised if we call upon you sometime during this session today to hear your awesome audio voice to tell us a little bit more about that. But how has and did the faith community impacted slavery? Someone said freedom and hope. Thank you, Sister Tina. Civil rights, they were involved in that freedom. Assessing freeing slaves. Yes, thank you, Angela, for that. It challenged the way in which slavery was justified. Hey, all right, let's look at the next one. How have the faith community impacted homelessness? How is it that the faith community has impacted or impacting homelessness? Let's go to homelessness. See, I'm keeping y'all alive. So we're moving y'all. So start typing, get them fingers going. I want to see what you're saying about the impact of slavery, impact of faith community on homelessness. Thank you, Sister Rachel. Thank you very much. Meal programs. That's right. Sister Mary, thank you for homeless ministry outreach, you all. Okay. Feeding, shelter, and warmth. Thank you, Sister Doreen. Sister Yolanda, thank you. Providing shelter. All right. Brother Ed, more services for the homeless. Amen. Ready for the next one, y'all? Here we go. Next slide. Next one is, how has the faith community impacted or impacts social injustice? How has it impacted social injustice? What role have the faith community, have they impacted dealing with social injustice, you all? Told you we're going to keep you all moving on this process. We got a couple more to go. So I want to hear what you got to say. Encourage us to fight for freedom. Sister Tiffany, thank you. All right, Brother Mara, Sister Mara, they prioritize the value of human life. See that? Over politics, unjust practices. Thank you for that. More people are involved. Yes. Love and respect. Yes. Giving voices for the vulnerable. Thank you, Sister Karen. You're coming on and showing us how the faith community has done that. Now, how has the faith community impacted poverty? How has it impacted poverty, you all? How has the faith community? I mean, I think about it in these last year and a half where people was out of jobs, the faith community had to deal with the onslaught of poverty. What has the faith community done in your community that you know about that has impacted poverty? Providing basic needs, right? Very well, Reverend Dana. Thank you for joining us. Sister Tina says education. Sister Kathleen says food banks. That's right, homeless ministry. Job training, job training program, even after school programs, clothing. And Sister Gail saying, blessed to be a blessing. Churches help to fill in those gaps. Amen. Collecting and providing clothes, food, and shelter. Thank you, Brother Adam. Keep it coming. Kendra Edwards, Sister Kendra said, organizing programs. That is so true. And so, as you all know, the critical piece is that faith community has played a role in all aspects. They played a role in prevention. They played a role in intervention. They played a role in the services of supporting everyone in the role that we are. And substance misuse prevention and treatment and recovery play that role. And the faith community has played a role in each one of those. And now it's time for you all to engage yourself, whatever part of that continuum you're on, to really look at it.
Hi, Tracy, this is LaShonda.
Yes.
We have a question. Angela Wilson has a question. I think she'd want to unmute your mic.
Angela, I'm sorry.
Please.
Sister Angela. Are you there, Sister Angela?
No, I probably just didn't lower my hand. I thought.
Okay.
No,
okay.
I'm sorry.
How you doing, Sister Angela? Thank you for calling. I'm
doing fine. How you doing, Tracy?
All right. Thank you for joining all the way from Detroit. Thank you. Faith community. Anyone else? All right. All right. Faith communities, keep those coming. Breaking barriers by providing equity. Yes. So when we look at our continuum of work, that when we do from the Institute of Medicine, it says to us that good behavioral health continuum looks like what you see there. So if you are in the faith community, what this is saying to us in our work in misuse, behavioral health, misuse prevention, treatment, and aftercare is that there is a continuum, and that no matter what scale people fit on, someone has to be affected. If you do promotion on the far left, that's important to have when you're talking about good behavioral health. If you're doing prevention, like we're trying to do today, we're trying to look at all levels of prevention. We're looking at the universal population, which means everybody. We're looking at selected population, that means those who are having several risk factors that can impact them. And we're looking at indicated populations for those who've already engaged themselves in a very negative behavior, but we can still impact their lives and do prevention work for them. We have to know that faith communities have already outsized history of really addressing misuse issues on this continuum of care. And this model is for you to look at, from treatment to what we call maintenance, which is also part of recovery. The full level of the continuum, the faith community plays an important role. And today we're looking at that very first left side to see how faith communities can really be a part of promotion and prevention. All right. So this is that time I want you to open up your chats and look at this particular question here. All right. Are you ready? All right, everyone. What substance misuse messages are conveyed by the faith community in the communities that you serve? What substance misuse messages are conveyed by the faith community in the communities that you serve. I'll give you a few minutes to put it in the chat and tell me what substance misuse messages are conveyed by the faith community in the community you serve. And if you want, please, I may call on you to give us more detail on that. It only happens in the neighborhoods. Somebody's talking. Miquela, thank you. Many people have been marginalized. Thank you for that. We need to look at things that are just not we want to. You're right. It only happens in neighborhoods. People who use substances are immoral. That's the message that some folks are saying. Reverend Jan Brown. Reverend Jan Brown, can you unmute your mic just for a minute? I want to hear what you mean by that. Reverend Brown? She doesn't want to say anything. Okay, that's all right. I understand. There's still some level of stigma. Ooh, marginalization. Brother Adam, thank you in regards to substance misuse. If you use substances, you are not of faith that God can break those use habits. Brother Art Salazar, thank you for that. Becky Reed, moral failing. That's the message we're getting. Patricia Turner, all you need to do is pray about it. Patricia, unmute your mic. Tell me a little bit more about that. I told you I was going to call on you because we want to hear you. Come on, Patricia.
Oftentimes I hear that, all you need to do is take it to God. You'll be okay.
Oh, okay.
You don't need any other help than that.
That's the message that you see sometimes in in the faith by the faith community.
Yeah.
Interesting. Do you see any other messages of that have shown some positiveness to it? Have you seen somewhere it says, "Hey, we come to our program. This is what it's going to do"? Have you seen any of that in your community?
Yeah, I don't see a lot of that in my community. Unfortunately.
What community are you from, Sister Pat?
I'm in Indiana.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining from Indiana.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it. Thank you for that. Keep bringing them on. You are. Somebody says that's Lynn. You are loved, and we want to embrace and support you. Ooh, that's a nice message. I like that message. Sister, brother, is that Lynn? Lynn, can you unmute your mic for a minute?
Sure.
Tell me what you hear. That's what you're hearing there. Where you from?
Asheville, North Carolina.
All right. Okay, it's a beautiful city.
Yeah, we have an urban ministry that's part of our church and other churches participated in, and it's right in downtown. It was an old dying Methodist church that got converted. Now it's sort of a watering hole and a gathering spot for all sorts of folks, but especially folks in recovery.
All right. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for the message. Appreciate it. Oh, Sister Deb, I'm not going to read all that. You're going to have to open your mic and tell me something. Come on, Sister Deb.
Hey, good morning. Yeah.
Good morning. Where are you coming from, Sister Deb?
Coming from Dallas, Fort Worth.
Hey, okay. The DFW area.
Yeah, so the community I serve in, we have a huge recovery program, well, many programs available, largely Celebrate Recovery. You can't hardly, you can throw a rock in any direction, hit a church that offers that programming, and it's pretty big. And also the community I serve in, we're big proponents of getting people into other areas to serve, to find their gifts, because when you're serving others, it helps you grow. And so basically we're more concerned about where you're going rather than where you've been. So
That's right.
the motto in the community I serve is "Come as you are, you will be loved." And
hey, that's a message. That's a beautiful message.
It's true. So isn't that what Jesus had it?
Yes.
That's his message. Yeah.
Yes, that is awesome. Thank you for getting on and doing that for me. I truly appreciate that. I know I appreciate you all doing that. And then somebody said regeneration, 12-step discipleship. Thank you, Sister Gail. Sister Mary saying faith-based 90-day residential. Few fellowships have coordinated outreach with syringe exchanges and programming. One of the things I want to talk about is there any prevention out there, any prevention messages that any of you have seen in your community from the faith community? Any prevention messages out there? Just put them in the chat. So we want that as a record too, because we know that prevention, an ounce of prevention is much more better than a pound of cure. I think I said that right. If not, y'all will correct me. I already know that, but we appreciate that. Come as you will, be loved. I love that, Sister Deb. Okay, keep them coming, y'all. Keep them coming. Now we move on. Why involve faith-based and spiritual institutions? You all, as my pastor would say, you all ask good questions. You all ask really good questions. And so then I must move into the answer, because faith groups, they exist in nearly every one of our communities: rural, frontier, urban, suburban, East Coast, West Coast, South, Southwest area. And so the presence of faith groups, they lend the credibility. Faith groups touch people of all ages, all economic levels and ethnicities, and uniquely, faith communities can mobilize those folks as well. They provide a strong sense of community and responsibility. If you're in a faith community that really touches on you and wants that sense of community and responsibility, that is critical. And faith communities also look to and are respected. The members are looked to and respect the opinions and the guidance of their faith communities. We also know that why involve faith communities in your prevention work or your other work along the continuum of care? Because clerk and laity recognize substance misuse as an important issue among family members in their congregation. I can't wait till you hear from Dr. Weiss and from the other panelists today is how they get involved with their laity and with their members about this issue of substance misuse and prevention. Also, we know there's support from congregational members. That's why it's important to get faith communities involved, because the members are also part of the community. Am I right? So that's important as well, right? Also, they provide opportunities to work with families who might otherwise not be even nowhere involved in the prevention work. So they can bring folks to the table. And the religion and spirit, their religion and spirituality are really what we know as key protective factors in what we do in prevention. We know that certain protective factors are critical, and one of them is to have a sense of religion or spirituality, because that protects an individual in making their right decisions in their lives as it relates to substance misuse and substance abuse. And also maintaining recovery, as we heard from so many folks. Keep them chats going, y'all. I like to see what I'm hearing. That's really critical. And that's important. Why involve faith-based spiritual institutions? Y'all answer some questions for me in the chat. You tell me why. Sister Kara, tell me about your Wellness Beyond the Walls real quick, so we know how you get faith folks involved in prevention in your community. Can you unmute your mic?
Yes, I can. Good afternoon. Or morning.
Good afternoon. Good morning. Yes.
Of course, Wellness Beyond the Walls, we penned that 7 years ago here in Detroit Wayne Prevention Community. And it is stating that, beside prayer inside of the church, we talked about our prayer plus outside of the temple or the places of worship, places of worship where you to be able to not just pray away everything, but to know that the prevention, substance use disorder, and mental health services are available outside of the places of faith. That's what awesome. The Wellness Beyond the Walls focus and purpose was.
Okay. Thank you for that. There are anybody, keep them coming, y'all. I really like that. That's so really, really good. Keep them. Sister Kim, I call her KE. Partnerships provide growth for both sides. Sister KE, tell me what you mean by that. Unmute your mic.
Where's that train when I need it? Well, because I come from a very small town in Oklahoma, sometimes they grow up with beliefs that have been passed down from generation to generation.
That's right.
About people who are different from themselves.
Amen.
Becoming involved with people who have problems or what they see as are living in a world of sin. Sometimes they do those things because of what they grew up with, or it's just all they know. So if the church can see that these people are a tad bit helpless to their lives, that they can learn that they need empathy too. They don't need judgment. And the person with the problem can learn that church people can grow and become partners to help, as instead of just judgment all the time.
That's so good. Awesome. So good. Thank you for that. Keep those coming, you all, because we are talking about the importance of faith being involved in prevention. That was a great example. I call her KE because her name is Kim Elizabeth. So I just like to mess with her on that. So thank you, Kim. We appreciate that. But we all don't know that take a look at this slide, you all, because it's critical for us to understand that in prevention work, any kind of work, treatment or recovery work, that much of what community members learn about different substances like alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use, is conveyed to what the faith community says or does not say about it. Now, I know not in your town, in Southwest, not New Mexico, not Texas, not Oklahoma, not Louisiana. I know it doesn't happen in those communities, but in some communities, it's what the faith community says or does not say about that. What did I say about substance use and misuse? That's critical in what we do. And then how we're going to impact our communities, we got to engage the faith community. If they're silent, it may not be positive. If they're engaging, it may be positive, but we have to get them engaged in some way or another, okay? So when we look at faith communities, one of the things I really want you to take a look at real quickly is that there is similarities between prevention science and faith. And I want you to tell me, which one of these things you see on your slide as you seeing going on in your faith, if you're from a faith community or part of a faith community, which one of the things you see here that is happening in your community, in your faith community? Is it the importance of readiness for change? Is it engaging populations across the lifespan? Is it serving individuals with different levels of risk and their family members? Is it focusing on community wellness? Is it multi-sectoral approaches using multiple groups to get involved? Or is it that important evidence-based approaches? Which ones do you see happening in your community? Put in the chat box. Tell me what you see. I'm going to call on you, so get ready. So I want to hear you tell me which one of these that you see is really critical. If you're part of the faith community, if you're part of the prevention community, which one of these you see to engage that faith community? Which one is, if you're part of the faith community, which one of these do you want to see that the prevention community could help your community out with as a faith person? So what other similarities are there that aren't on the slide? That's a good point, Sister Kim. What other things are we missing on that could be similarities to prevention and the faith community? What other things that are missing that could be added to this slide? Are there any other similarities that you and prevention folks are doing, or you and the faith community are doing? Ooh, Tyler, I like that. What you just said there, serving individuals with different levels of risk and their family members, right? Sister Kathleen, engaging populations across that lifespan. That's right. Getting those folks involved. That's what you see in your community. You see different churches have focus on different age brackets, right? Children through seniors. So there is an outreach to all of these along the lifespan. Love it. Love it. Glad to hear that. Sister Kathleen, where are you coming from? Unmute your mic. Tell me a little bit about what you're talking about. Sister Kathleen, Goodale, are you there? Oh, Yakima. Okay. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. All right. It can talk, it calls it back to what someone else just said as far reaching. Tyler, I'm gonna let you unmute your mic and tell me what you're talking about.
Yeah, so it was just discussed a minute ago.
Yes, sir.
And so it just, as far as the faith community, as well as the prevention community, reaching out to those maybe underserved populations or folks who maybe we wouldn't usually reach out to or think are, maybe ready to receive the message or something like that. But, serving those individuals whose risk level is very, very slight to extremely great.
Right.
And their family members, not picking and choosing who we seek out and, spread the messages to, but
Amen.
making sure that we're reaching out to all.
Awesome. Where are you coming from, Brother Tyler?
I'm coming from Columbus, Seymour, Indiana here,
Okay.
in the Midwest.
Okay. All right. Thank you for joining. We appreciate it.
For sure.
Ooh, I just love that. Somebody, Sister Mary, you're the last one I'm going to ask to unmute your mic. Tell me about that, being a geriatric specialist. Tell me why you don't see it.
Well, my role with the geriatric adult specialty team, which is under the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services in the Division of Mental Health, I go out to all kinds of agencies and programs and to the faith community, if I can ever get somebody in the faith community to let me in the door, to talk about mental health and substance misuse issues as well as dementia. But it is a real hard sell to get folks to even consider the possibility that older adults might be using substances of any kind. And if a person has been using substances throughout much of their life, just because they suddenly turned 60 or 65 doesn't mean that now suddenly they're putting down the bottle or stopping using their substances.
Yes, ma'am.
And in fact, they have even more risk because of now with complicating health issues and the introduction of multiple prescribed medications along with these substances increases the mortality risk, increases all risk.
Yes. Yes. And where you coming from? I missed that, Sister Mary. Where you coming from again?
I cover in North Carolina, Bladen County, Scotland County, and Robeson County.
Okay. Well, welcome. We appreciate your insight and your input. Thank you very much for joining us. All right. So let's keep it pushing, y'all, because we got some more stuff we got to talk about. I want you to know that every role for every sector, there's a role for every sector, but most importantly, there's truly a role for the faith community. Most importantly, there's truly a role for faith to play a role. We know that in good prevention, the data and research shows that if you have everyone on this sheet involved collectively together in your community to do good substance misuse prevention, that you'll have a chance of reducing it and preventing it from happening. But one of the key aspects, as you see there, that's on that list is faith leaders, because people with faith institutionalized, it really helps to guide and leading others. So that's so critical. So now it's that time. Now I want to introduce to you my colleague, Tasha Wilkerson, who is our director of training for our organization, and is really a person that really is engaged in really good training work that we do around the country. I want to have her come on, and we have an activity for you all. And this activity, you won't just be all of y'all together. We're going to break y'all up into groups. So are you ready, y'all? Sister Tasha, what you got?
Hey, Tracy, thanks for the introduction. Hello, everyone. This activity we really love doing. We do it with our healing circle work that we do. And we see this as an opportunity to share relates to what is your blue sky? When we think about a blue sky, we think about what's that big picture? Think big, what is that goal or that idea that you have in your mind that you feel like, you know what, this may not work, but you want to give it to God anyway. And you want to put it out there anyway to see what is possible. Great things. Individuals had some wonderful things to say. And this is the blue sky, right? The room that I just left, I just want to share really quickly. He shared like in the faith, and LaShonda shared it as well, that we're so stuck in tradition that we can't get outside of the box of helping individuals when they walk into your doors. That's my summary of my walk away. And that's such a blue sky. And the bad thing about that is that it has to be a blue sky, which it should just be at arm's reach for us. That should be a normal thing. And so everyone has some awesome things to share in their blue sky. And we are hoping that after this event today, that you will be able to do some planning. We will be able to talk a little more, and we're going to talk about that, Tracy and the training team and LaShonda's group, on what the next real steps can be after an event like this, as it relates to really doing some action planning about what was shared in your blue sky. So the activity wasn't just to type, but it was to type, but also the hope is that we'll do something with that later. So thank you guys for participating. Thank you guys for being so open to all the moving around and, beaming from place to place. Thank you, facilitators, for your Google Doc working or not, but I see you guys were very flexible, and that's what I love about this work, that we go in, we do the work, and we're flexible, and we're going to make it happen. Yes. So much. I would transition it over to Carl.
In 1991, I was enjoying life. My background was in finance. I was enjoying all the fruits of my labor. Was doing okay financially and that sort of thing. And what happened was that I got involved with somebody that had a drug problem. I didn't realize it at the time. I thought it was kind of all fun and games. It was exciting. It was engaging and lots of fun. However, it was fun until it wasn't anymore. Although I didn't have a substance use disorder background, I did have some friends and family that were, so I was somewhat familiar, but nothing like the opioid crisis. And the opioid crisis back in the 90s wasn't what it is today. And so I learned a lot during that time. I saw my life kind of crumble along with the person I was with. And so until one day I went to an agency, and they had done some outreach, and they were trying to reach out to folks and try to create access and awareness around substance use. So I went to this agency and with her to try to get help, and they welcomed me with open arms. Didn't ask for insurance or anything like that, but they just welcomed me and her. And she was able to kind of find her way into recovery, and through faith-based connections, and that was a major part of the support. The agency itself, although it was a secular organization, had many faith components, and it was kind of a cross section of that. I was so captivated by how welcoming they were, because I was coming from a financial industry where production was about, how much money do you have under management, constantly doing that I said, oh, let me try volunteering. I served on the board, and then a year as a volunteer, then a year later, although it was a very small agency at the time, still is, I became director, and that was a life-changing opportunity for me. I've had to learn about stigma because I came in with some preconceived notions about, and the world has changed too. Language is important. We've talked about, we'll talk about that as we go forward. But I think our challenge going forward is that stigma that was talked about in our blue sky conversation. There was conversation about the need for collaboration, especially with faith communities. There were, in the previous conversation, there were we pointed out some issues with the LGBT community and the faith community not necessarily seeing eye to eye, and there's actually been some hurt. I think if we look back in our history, we'll see hurt in a lot of different ways. But what I found and what I've learned through my own recovery is that it is about today, and it is about trying to understand and learn from one another to make the world better, for yourself and myself, but also for the community at large. Fortunately, recovery happened. I ended up marrying her, and we had 10 years. I say 10 years. We probably had 8 really great years. The last 2 years, unfortunately, there was a relapse, and never came back, and that was sad. And that, unfortunately, that is the challenge, and that hurt I carried for many years, because I did so much to try to fix her. Did so much, got involved with the prevention coalitions, and got involved with treatment. Obviously, I changed my career, and it was so knee deep trying to find solutions and trying to do that. And all along the way, running into stigma. You know, people would look at me and kind of dismiss her condition as it was a moral failure. And I've had some really lively conversations with faith leaders about that. I saw in the chat that, you know, some people believe that if you don't have God, you know, that is the reason. And it may very well be for some folks, but everybody's at a different place. Now that I'm running the agency, I can see it. But I also, as I was mentioning in our small group, is that the faith community is a major source of support for all of us that are dealing with substance use disorder, mental health, and associated behavioral conditions. So in order for us to explore strategies for disrupting stigma, which is our objective for this section, especially for people with a substance use disorder in faith organizations, we need to begin to understand what is stigma. So we'll start with a basic description of what it is: a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or person. And I certainly felt that way. And I wasn't the person necessarily using the drugs, but I was living a life as a drug addict, but not a person addicted to drug. Because I use the term addict in a loving way. As once we found recovery and that sort of thing, we were doing that, but we didn't recognize the fact that when you label the person as the condition, it perpetuates the stigma. So I've learned to not use that term and talk about people seeking recovery, or something other than terming that. But when I attend a celebration for somebody in an AA or NA meeting, a lot of times they'll use those terms, and it continues today. So it's okay to use the term if it's your own term, but it's not okay for somebody outside to kind of speak to it. Stigma is a discrimination against an identifiable group of people, a place, or a nation. It is associated with lack of knowledge, need for blame, fears, and rumors. Could folks identify perhaps a stigma in their community? Can you put that in the chat? Is there a particular stigma that is troublesome to you? Person first language, that is one of those key terms. Thank you, Karen. Someone struggling with addiction. Yes. LaShonda. Yes. The slides are coming, so we will have all the slides. When we look at the iceberg, we see what is visible to all of us, but we don't see the trauma. We don't see the mental conditions or the organic chemistry in someone's brain. We don't see their current situation. And it's all too easy sometimes just to kind of look at what the surface is, because we're all living very busy lives. Stigma towards mental illness and addiction, as well as stigma towards personal admittance of weakness or vulnerability. Thank you, Adam, for that. Stigma that those with mental health issues are dangerous. I think a lot of times what we look at is, we see the sensationalism in the news, and we see some of these horrendous acts. There's a very small population, or a small proportion of the total population of people struggling with mental health. There's probably, we've got 100 people in the room, there's probably 25 of us that have lived experience, whether it's our own or that of somebody that we care for. It is very prevalent, and unfortunately, not enough people not enough conversation, and people isolate. That isolation and those barriers to treatment because of the shame lead to the 93,000 people who died in 2020 from drug overdoses. Absolutely. General lack of mental health literacy. Again, we are still far better than we were back in the early 90s. But it's taken us 30 years to just get this point. And unfortunately, the drugs are more dangerous today, more complex. Living in this world is more complex. And so we need all hands on deck. Those in poverty, addiction is worse due to their personal weakness or inabilities. That's one of the stigmas that is challenging. And I know it slaps in the face of some religious folks. And as preventionists, we need to be able to be in a place where it's okay to have those conversations. It's more important to have conversations or not have conversations, but keep people in the room, keep people at the table. Because if you think back about your own career in prevention or the work that you're doing, more often than not, people have some lived experience. And the longer that you're in the field, I'm trained as a licensed drug and alcohol counselor, as well as a prevention specialist. We've seen a lot of different things, and my attitudes and my thoughts have changed over those years. I still bring some of the baggage that I've had from my losses, because my first wife did pass in the early 2000s, and it was unfortunate. It was unceremonious, unclear as how she passed, but she passed. She passed alone, and it was sad. It's that hurt and pain and loss, and somebody who was tremendously vibrant and that sort of thing, and then lost everything. People are invested in that. How many times and how many coalitions have volunteers of parents and loved ones who have lost a child, and they're some of the greatest resources. How many faith leaders I've always called them the kind of the first responders for lots of families, because the faith community is often a first link where people actually get help. So let's dig in a little bit more in terms of the 4 specific components, because if we are ever going to eliminate stigma, as Tyler's big sky view is, we need to be able to understand what it is and recognize when it happens and be able to kind of address it. That's one of the takeaways that we've got to look at today. Our Martha, thank you for that. Stigma is our own ignorance about mental health and substance use disorders. I think, it's definitely ignorance. And I mean that because people have not learned to live yet. Or don't quite understand it, because I think, for those of us who have experienced it firsthand or secondhand, we understand, but it's very difficult. And we've got to cultivate, and we've got to have a better voice with this. Kathleen went, unfortunately, even in the faith community, we see some with mental health or substance use problems as beyond help. I remember when we first started, it was like jails, institutions, and death. And you got to let people hit rock bottom.
Right.
Those kinds of things. And it's not that today. I remember when we first started, it was a debate, and the people in certain self-help groups criticized people that were on medically assisted treatment. And today that has changed. Halfway houses are allowing people to be on medically assisted treatment. As the science grows, we begin to understand that people are different. There are many of us faith leaders who have children who struggle with addiction. Often we keep that hidden in the closet and are afraid of the stigma that we are unfit as parents, and that means we are unfit as leaders. Thank you so much, Kathleen, for sharing that, because that is a huge aspect.
Yes, it
and
is.
I think a lot of times people will be hesitant to come forward for those kinds of things. Me being the leader of a nonprofit, the recovery center, and my wife is struggling with addiction after 8 years of continuous recovery. And then being out of my control. Can you imagine folks that don't have the resources or the understanding of how it all works and those kinds of things? It's very difficult. But thank you so much for sharing that, Kathleen. That's why we need to kind of continue to have these conversations, and where we see that labeling and differentiation, we call it out. Really looking at reducing that labeling and stereotypes, because there are so many. I always say that most of my friends are in recovery, and they are some of the finest people that I've ever met. And that's because they've been willing to admit their struggles. They're not putting on that facade. Now, there's no perfection, and there's lots of challenges. But our world can get better, and it can get better in large part, or in many instances, with the help of our faith partners. There are different types of stigma. We need to match our responses to the type of stigma we are addressing. Well put. Thank you very much, Reverend. I agree, because a lot of times, we were talking about labeling and stereotyping. A lot of it is us and them, taking the negative attributes to differentiate groups, that separation between us and them, much like the 12-step groups that don't want to, well, I'm not that bad, or the alcohol person that's just using alcohol or misusing alcohol regularly. You say, well, at least I'm not shooting drugs. It is that it's human nature, and it is extreme, but it's not human at all. We need to. That's the work that we're trying to do with prevention, is to try to realize that it is not us and them, it's just us. And the better we understand that, and even, in working with faith communities, sometimes you need to say, okay, well, perhaps this particular person isn't the best person to kind of be interacting, but have that support so you can do a handoff and work with that. Those are some of the things that when you're working in the faith community, they are not going to line up. They are not spending their days looking at the SPF flower. They are not spending their days looking at sustainability and cultural competence as a checkbox. They're looking at building their congregations, addressing the needs of their members and those types of things. And so we've got to, just like we want to meet the person where they're at with substance use disorder, We also want to meet the faith leaders where they're at and understand that, hey, they're doing good work. And they can be partners and we can learn from them. The more of that kind of relationship, the better we can be. Then the disadvantages, individuals are labeled and linked to undesirable characteristics, status loss, discrimination occur including, all sectors of being. And then we see these disparities. We've seen the disparities by, stigma or racism. But, person of color with, it also translates to challenges as well in the substance use realm. And those are the challenges. And I often, part of the reason why I've stayed in this work as long as I have is because we need more voices in our community kind of pushing forward and advocating for folks that might not be in a place where they can advocate for themselves because maybe they're struggling with an addiction habit, or maybe they've lost everything, or they've burnt their bridges. That's where these different kinds of things, we need to address. I'm going to put into the chat here one of my favorite resources. Dr. John Kelly from the Recovery Institute. It's part of Harvard. Is a great has a great website on recovery answers. I know it's more recovery and not necessarily prevention. However, I do believe as a preventionist, it is important to kind of understand, and there's some really great information if you're not aware of this resource that you can utilize in your prevention practices. So I encourage you to kind of take a look at that resource. It's very powerful. We talked a lot today about power, shame-based mark of disgrace, and how that yields. And how do we eliminate that darkness from our community? Well, it's through light and self-disclosure, as Kathleen had done, talking about her particular episode. That's part of the reason. Oh, I'm sorry. That's part of the reason why I talk about my story, not necessarily to gain sympathy or what have you, but to recognize that this happens and this is everywhere. And it is, somebody had brought up earlier too that some people think it's just happening in certain in certain neighborhoods, certain conditions, that sort of thing. But unfortunately, it is pervasive. And now with the chemical nature of the drugs, it's being more widely distributed because it's easier to conceal and becomes more and more challenging. Stigmatized individuals, as we said, internalize negative perceptions. I know I felt very embarrassed when my wife was having her challenges and that sort of thing, and it reduced my confidence. Not to mention what it did to her. And unfortunately, it's a self-fulfilling challenge, and that negative perceptions of themselves is very, very difficult. Hiding addiction becomes the rational thing. In the midst of her addiction, it seemed to me that I knew that she was getting drugs. I knew that she was having difficulty. There were thoughts of she was going through our savings and that sort of thing. It was so difficult and helpless. I was thinking of irrational things to do in order to and they seemed to be rational. It was very, very difficult, and something that we all had to kind of address. Unfortunately, our relationship ended, and she moved on. I also moved on, and fortunately, I've remarried. The picture I have is my current wife and two children, and so we are, so. We struggle so much with labeling and trying to describe and wish this stuff away. It has significant impacts in our community. The domains, obviously, it impacts our individual, peer, family, school, community, and faith. Much like what we do as preventionists, we are always looking at those areas. What can we do to disrupt? And I really want to focus on solutions. One of the best things, in 1999, it was an important year because I had just ended my relationship with my wife, and I was kind of lost trying to find my way back, still doing this work. But two very important people came into my life at that time. Two very important people that really made a difference in my life. Tracy Johnson was one of them, and Reverend David Lima was the other. And he was the person that I mentioned before. He was the leader of our Interchurch Council. And he was a very staunch, kind of right-wing person. I tend to be left of center on that. So we had some lively debates, but we did have a love for one another. And we did white knuckle it when we disagreed, because we were seeing people dying in the streets, and neither of us wanted to see that happen. And quite frankly, he's been my strongest partner for the last 20 years, and continues to be an important part of my life, and is now a leader in doing community outreach to folks for post overdose. He does, and his organization does, school-based health and anti-stigma campaigns, and it spends a lot of time talking to his faith leaders, the faith leaders in our community, to kind of address addiction. He's a champion in our community, and something that is so important. So building those friendships and partnerships are really, really key, because as was mentioned, and we'll continue to mention, the challenge is overcoming that ignorance. And in order to overcome that ignorance, you need to build trust. And trust does not happen by reading a billboard or getting a flyer or attending a meeting per se, or at least not one. It takes time. And as preventionists, and the way funding happens and that sort of thing, we're very focused on time and making sure that our outcomes are where they're at. But this stuff takes time. And so it's, rather than getting frustrated and stopping, we need to kind of look for the long haul. And so because the partnerships are definitely worth making, because they can last a lifetime, and we can make a huge difference going forward. So one of the things that we did, as I mentioned, we created this Interchurch Outreach Network, and it was an opportunity to kind of talk to and get faith-based folks together. We provided education, because all of them were kind of being touched by this one way or another. As I mentioned before, faith leaders are oftentimes the first responders, but they're not necessarily equipped to talk about addiction. So as preventionists, creating educational and informational opportunities is part of what we could do. And so part of a prevention program we created this network. It was a 5-session, 5-week program that really provided basic understanding of addiction, motivational interviewing, and resources, so that people could come and work with folks, share a message of hope, be a bridge, and include positive evidence-based programs at their congregational level. We wanted to promote pro-health, non-stigmatizing, and the language, and that was difficult at times. But we're all learning, and we've got to kind of accept one another as such. I would love to hear from you in terms of folks that would be interested in sharing something good that is happening in your community with a faith-based organization, and how that's worked. If you'd like to share that now, put it in the chat and we can call or raise your hand. We'll be happy to call on you, because we need to really look at building strong, vibrant communities, and faith communities are an important part of that aspect. I'm also going to put in the chat here. Let's see here. There's a really interesting website as well for faith-based examples of framing the conversation, because a lot of this is about framing conversations. Tracy and PTJ and SheRay's, we're doing a lot of town hall conversations with communities to kind of build some of those relationships and that sort of thing, to try to get people talking about it. Everybody's concerned about it, but people seem to be going in different directions. So we want to make sure that bringing people together can lead to better outcomes, and that's where we're really trying to do, because that's where we're at. So Tracy, I mean, you want to talk a little bit about some of the town hall work that we've been doing?
Yeah, I think one of the things I wanted to touch base on is that when we talked to a lot of communities as it relates to town halls, we found that using the town hall format for prevention and faith is a good sort of opportunity for preventionists. We've done it in 6 communities in one state, and we've done it for 3 communities in another, or 5 communities in another state. And each time we've done them, it's based around your prevention and your faith leader coming together, having a conversation, maybe using that faith ecumenical group that's located in your county, parish, or community. Also utilizing the opportunity to have that conversation about what do we want to see come out of that meeting. And we've been able to pull together that town hall where everyone has an opportunity to not only hear from others, but also break into smaller groups to talk with each other about the role that prevention and faith can see, and that prevention and faith can play together. And those are really critical, and we found them to be really exceptional, especially when we did it in the rural communities in both states that we were at, because it allowed for we sort of facilitated a conversation among folks to talk about what should be some of the best strategies for our area as it relates to prevention, and how can faith lend its role in that process. It doesn't necessarily have to be a building. It could be a body or membership. It could be talking to the faith organization's key staff and building capacity that way. So, in every time we were able to pull together and bring together those town halls, I think it's been quite a few of them, is that when we had them, we utilize them as a way for conversations, and we have these sort of scripted questions that would allow for the faith and the community members to have a conversation about prevention, and what does prevention look like, and how does substance misuse prevention can be engaged, and what kind of role that faith communities can play in that process. And so one of the things that we found is that we get them started, and they take it from there to order build strategies around ways that they can be involved, ways that they can get engaged beyond just this one town hall meeting, and that the preventionist then takes over from that community or from that region, Carl, like we did in Wisconsin, for instance.
Right.
The preventionist comes in, takes over that role, and then there's a relationship building. As you know, as we all know in this world, life is about relationships, right? It really is. And it's about how we can engage each other in having trust, in having honesty with each other, and having a sense of engagement with each other, but it starts with trust. And it's about relationships. And so some of us in the prevention field have to understand that importance and understand where their faith organization or faith groups are coming from, and find that happy medium, like in that slide we showed earlier, where the similarities are. I think that's a critical point when we talk about good faith prevention work in the communities, no matter what size, if it's frontier, if it's rural, suburban, or urban. We found that that's been the message, and that's been the main focus of good prevention strategies.
Great. I think the takeaway here is creating space in your coalitions, in your community, in your meetings, for people to be themselves, and to accept them for who they are, and hopefully educate folks that might not be as enlightened about some things as others, and creating that safe space, not only for the folks who are struggling with substance use and mental health, but also with those that might not quite understand all the different other components, because one size does not fit all. I am looking at Kara Thomas. I don't know if you wanted to unmute and share with us. We've got the 7th annual faith-based wellness Beyond the Walls. How is that working for you?
Sister
Sorry
Cara?
about that. Took me a minute to unmute. I so much I can say about how is it working for us, but particularly what I shared a little bit earlier on this. We're 7 years in of doing this conference, and it addresses communities of faith along with working with clergy. This year we're going to, due to COVID, we wanted to encourage our youth to participate and have a much larger representation of hearing their voice and how they made it through this year with all of the challenges and changes that have occurred in our communities as relates to their mental and physical, emotional, spiritual health. And so this year, our two-day conference will be on, of course, again, Wellness Beyond the Walls, and again, addressing those persons that are not able to always go to their faith organizations, which a lot of them, like mine, were closed for these past 18 months, and hoping that some way we can address some of the issues and concerns along with some of our great fearless leaders and speakers that work with youth and programs that are clergy, along with persons that are working in prevention field, will be presenting. For our 5th year, I have to give Mr. Johnson kudos. He was our keynote speaker at the 5th year conference when we were face-to-face then. And he brought many tools that I think that have helped us to even continue to carry this torch of Wellness Beyond the Walls with our communities, and a lot of those that you even have here today at the table participating. So it's open. You don't have to be in Detroit, Wayne metropolitan area. This is a conference that is open to any person that wants to attend and participate with us, just as we are doing with you at the PTTC.
That's great. It sounds like a community has been built, and it continues, and it's something that needs to be nurtured. So in terms of your prevention work, as practitioners around the country, it's important to kind of work with the communities that you have in front of you, and then open those doors to beyond that. I know that we're working in the Philadelphia area, in the Broward County area, and others, because people recognize the importance of these faith communities. Not always easy to kind of get everybody on the same page, so don't get frustrated if it doesn't happen immediately. I know we were talking earlier with a group, and getting involvement is a challenge. Has anybody had any success with getting faith members involved in their coalitions? If so, please put it in your chat. You'd love to hear from you. Yeah.
Carl, while they do that, I know we only have about seven
Yeah.
minutes left, but I do want to say to us in the prevention field and those of us in the faith field is that this stigma section that Carl talked about is critical. Because a lot of things that I used to take for granted about the words I use, the behaviors that I show, even in my 25 plus years in prevention, I tend not to think about how stigmatizing it may be to the people that I'm serving. And so I want you all in both the faith community and the prevention, misuse prevention field to understand that as we try to bring prevention or bring the faith of each other to our potential targeted populations, that stigma can be the barrier from them getting the message of faith or the message of prevention. As my pastor used to say, as he says it at my church right now, I'm going to let that settle for a minute. That what I said was that, because that's critical, that we think we have it and we come out with the message for prevention or the message for faith, and we don't think about the stigma it may be impacting and may be causing as that barrier to the folks who we're trying to serve. So understand that piece and understand that dynamic. Yes, Tyler, go ahead.
Yeah, so just even there, the cool thing that I heard you say was the way you kind of started it off was just even in the form of when we're talking about substance misuse, right? There are still many, and I'm actually part of one, a substance abuse council. I'm part of a drug-free council. And that just even the way that we describe those, but then also when we're talking about somebody being many people may think, well, substance abuser is the right way to say it, or substance user or substance misuser, but just thinking back on, really exploring that, each and every one of us, and saying, okay, well, first off, break it down. Substances are just about anything under the sun, as far as, you could have caffeine as a substance. You could have all the legal and illicit substances.
Mm-hmm.
However, the problem then becomes, when we're talking about it, substance misuse. We can all misuse any substance to a degree that's not healthy, right? Whether that be a legal substance or an illegal substance. And so when we talk about, then we bring in substance abuse in and of itself, you start talking about someone as being a substance abuser, all of a sudden that puts them in a very, very shameful category, because talk about the word abuse in any way, shape, or form, whether it be involving a human or involving an animal or involving anything, there's going to be terrible stigma with that. However, if you say, hey, it seems to me like you've been misusing this substance. Now, all of a sudden, it doesn't paint the person who is misusing as opposed to abusing in such a terrible way. And there you go. But even myself, within the past, 2-3 years, if somebody would have said that to me, hey, don't say abuse, say misuse, I would have said, why? There's no difference. But really, if we dive into it, explore it a little bit, all of a sudden, it is more person first language and not as demeaning and as stigmatizing. So
because what we want to be, Tyler, and everyone in the audience, that's awesome what you just said. Because what we want to be is transforming in our work. Even in the faith community, we want to be transformative. We want to transform people's lives. And even in prevention, we want to transform and engage their lives to more and more wellness, right? And so the critical piece is that how we speak and the way we speak and the words we use, we all have been falling short. I have as well, fallen short. And that every time I think about stigma, and there's several stigma reduction models that we've been using. We're doing something now in the 12 parishes in Northeast Louisiana. We're doing something in Ohio around stigma reduction. We're doing that whole piece about reducing that stigma allows us to become transformative about impacting people's lives. And so I want you to understand that dynamic in both the faith community and the prevention community, is that stigma piece, if we're going to disrupt that stigma, we're going to address, as Carl said, those stereotypes. We're going to employ more pro-health, non-stigmatizing methodologies and words, because as we reduce the stigma, we open the doors for wellness. Reducing the stigma, open the doors for wellness. And so I'll take these last 2 minutes, turn it over to Carl, who, if he wants to turn it over to LaShonda, then that'll be fine.
Just quick, it looks like there's Reverend Jan Brown put a YouTube video. Take a look at that. I also put an article from John Kelly, because you're absolutely right, Tyler. The language is powerful. We stopped using abuse because it's, again, it's a way of labeling the person as an abuser, as opposed to somebody that's struggling with addiction. And what we're trying to do is reduce that stigmatizing language. And, you know, and some people that might not be fully aware of all that might say, you're splitting hairs and that sort of thing. But that's the patience we need as preventionists to kind of stay at the table, continuing the conversation, because that's where learning happens and opening the wellness. So I'll leave it there, and I will some great things in the chat, and I'm going to turn it over to LaShonda.
Thank you all so much for your great work and your great words, Tracy and Carl and Tasha, and the team. I consider the audience members, not audience members, but part of the team that has come together. We're going to come back in 1 hour. So we're at the top of the hour. Come back in 1 hour to resume. You'll get a chance to ask questions of a wonderful panel that includes a young Onara from Oklahoma. He's going to talk to us a bit about a state perspective. You'll get an opportunity to hear from Pastor Pinson. He'll talk not only from the state perspective, but he's also a pastor. And then you'll hear from Katrina White, who is also on the call. It's going to be amazing. Tracy will come back and answer questions. So this is going to be an awesome panel. We'll get to talking about more strategies. So please come back at the top of the hour. First time today. My name is LaShonda Williamson Jennings, and I'm the co-director for the South-Southwest Prevention Technology Transfer Center. As I said earlier, we've got a great group of panelists here today. You all have heard already about Katrina White. So she's going to participate in our panel. We have Dr. Kamal Khalil participating in this panel. We have 2010 Preventionist of the Year, young Onara, here with us today. And we also have, I always get this thrown off when you have a lot of things in front of your name, Reverend Dr. Darren Penson today as well. So here's how this is going to work. We are going to let them talk about the work that they have done, either in their prevention work or with their faith communities, and how they've connected those two to get to prevention outcomes. But again, like I said, before we get there, I want you all to hear a little bit about the people today. Reverend Dr. Darren Penson is the senior pastor of Mount Calvary AME Church in the city of Detroit. Reverend Penson graduated from Wayne State University with a Bachelor's of Arts in Criminal Justice the year of 1999. Reverend Penson also matriculated to Ashland Theological Seminary, a division of Ashland University, and obtained a Master's of Divinity the year of 2005. Reverend Penson was also bestowed the honorary doctorate degree in divinity from Tennessee School of Religion. Reverend Penson is the commander chaplain assigned to number 10 with the Detroit Police Department. Reverend Penson also serves as chairman of the Faith-Based Committee of Crime Stoppers of Michigan. Reverend Penson is a certified QPR, Question, Persuade, Respond instructor through Detroit Wayne Mental Health Authority to combat suicide. Reverend Penson also is a contractor with several nonprofits in the city of Detroit to address substance misuse, mentorship, and character development. So you all, we will be hearing from Reverend Dr. K. Penson to share with us just about 3 to 5 minutes about the work that he has done. And then after that, you will hear from Dr. Kamal. So I'm going to read them all now, so then they can, when they get to talking, we don't start disrupting it. I'm going to shift it a little bit. We don't want to mess them up. So Dr. Kamal Khalil is a researcher and social advocate and has conducted research in various therapeutic areas. He was also engaged in academic instruction at Baker College, where he served as faculty member lecturing in basic medical science courses. Dr. Khalil has collaborated with various organizations in removing the stigma of numerous psychological and pathological processes that plague the faith community and the community at large. He has developed interfaith relationships to better understand the needs of its communities. He has completed his Master's of Business Administration from Indiana State University, Kelley School of Business. And then after that, you'll hear from Mr. Young Onara. He has a master's degree in public administration and more than 20 years of management experience, including implementation of strategies for improved public health on the continent of Africa and in the United States. He was the project director for the Oklahoma Strategic Prevention Framework State Incentive Grant, the SPI, the SPIF PFS, and the SPIF RX grants, Oklahoma Meth Prevention Initiative, and Crystal Darkness Phase 2 campaign. He's a trainer of trainers in cultural competency, meth prevention leadership academy, substance abuse prevention skills training, and sustainability. Young is an ICPS, so that's an International Certified Prevention Specialist, a senior member of the International Society of Substance Use Professionals, and Preventionist of the Year, as I told you all before, in 2010, which was awarded to him. Well, I have to take a moment because this award was not just given to Young by a small group, but it was from a group of his peers throughout the state of Oklahoma who awarded Young Onara the 2010 Preventionist of the Year accolade. And so with that, as I told you, we are going to give everybody 3 to 5 minutes to talk about the work that they have done, engaging, connecting the faith community as well as the prevention community together to get to prevention outcomes. And we are going to start with Reverend Dr. Darren Penson, and then next, Dr. Kamal Khalil will be on deck. And so I turn the time over to you, Dr. Darren Penson. And Wanda, if we could remove the slides and we can only see Dr. Darren Penson on our screen, I'd certainly appreciate it today.
Greetings, everyone, and thank you, LaShonda, for that wonderful introduction. I pray and hope that everyone can hear my voice. If you can't, just put a thumbs down. But greetings, and I'm greeting you from the city of Detroit, and is just glad to be here on today. I am one who is committed to the time frame, so I will not go beyond my time. I will be obedient to that. So I want to get directly in this because I wear 2 hats as a senior pastor as well as a preventionist as well. So I do the work. I am one of those pastors who is on the ground doing the work that God has called us to do. My foundation comes from a scriptural foundation, and I know this is an ecumenical setting, and I know we have different faith settings, but my foundation comes from the book of Matthew, the 28th chapter, 19 verses 19 and 20, and James chapter 2, verses 17 and 18. And that foundation is what compels me to continue to do the work of a faith leader, but more importantly, do the work as a preventionist as well. So Matthew 18, I just to give you a gist of it, it tells us to go ye out into the world and make disciples. I believe that it is our responsibility to go out into the world. James 2 begins to tell us that faith comes by hearing and hearing the word of God, but most importantly, faith without works is dead. And so I use those 2 scriptures as my foundation because we have faith, but faith without works is dead. I'm an advocate of that. I believe that in my church setting, and I teach that on a daily basis. And so with the next couple of minutes I have, I just want to share with you several principles that I believe is pivotal for faith organizations to do prevention work. The first thing is, number one, is that we have to be mindful as it declares, go ye out. We can't stay within the four walls of the church. We can't stay within the four walls of the synagogues or the mosques. We got to go out. And what that means is you got to go out of what's been what your traditional setting in. That means you got to go out and do the work. You got to go out and do the work. The second thing is that we need to understand that as we're going to make a difference is that we have to go out and go beyond what our traditional norms are or what we are accustomed to do. And what I mean by that is that we have to challenge some of our taboos. And what I mean by taboos, because a lot of prevention work that we do now, this was taboo in the church. In my setting, and I'm in an urban setting, you didn't talk about suicide in the church. You didn't talk about substance misuse in the church. You didn't talk about it. But everybody knew it was transpiring because when you had testimony service, somebody was testifying about something, or when you had a prayer box, somebody was submitting in the prayer box and you would see what the concerns were. And we cannot be like the proverbial ostrich who sticks his head in the sand. No, you can't be like the proverbial ostrich. You got to go after it and do what is required for us to do. The third principle is we have to recognize that you have to know your limitations. One thing about our synagogues, our mosques, and the faith setting is that it's embracive for everyone. We at our church, we say the doors of the church are now open. I mean, it's open for everyone to come in. But at the same token, while everyone is coming in, everybody has their own individual challenges. And so you have to know your limitation. Just as if I got a toothache, I got to refer it out and go see a dentist. I don't necessarily, I can go and be like, Lord, please heal my toothache, but I need some extractions may need to be done. So I got to go see a dentist or go see an orthodontist. It's the same thing in our faith communities that we have to recognize our limitations. It's okay to pray, but sometimes you got to refer some stuff out. So you got to refer it for what I believe God has given us, these workers such as your psychologists, your clinicians, your counselors, and various people of this nature. Number four is that you have to develop programs that's centered upon a need. At my specific church, what we do is whenever there's a need in the community, we develop a program. So I cannot look at channel 2, 4, and 7 at my local news station and hear about what's transpiring and not address it. We have to develop a need. We see a need, we have to develop a ministry. The fifth thing that we need to do is that we have to understand that our compelling hearts will compel us to do this work. And so while we're doing the work of a preventionist, we're not passing judgment on anybody. And I always say this is that in my church, this is a non-judgmental zone. Non-judgmental zone. So if you're trying to help somebody, we can't be judgmental with whatever their challenge is. We have to embrace them just as they are. So regardless of the challenge, regardless of the circumstance, or regardless of what the individual is being confronted with, it has to be a non-judgmental zone. And we have to embrace everyone within love. And so with the last 30 seconds that I have, I want to just recap just a little bit. Once again, you got to go out of the four walls of the church and make a difference. It has to be a non-judgmental zone. You have to develop programs that are centered upon the needs of the community, and don't be afraid. I'm one that recognizes that if you do the work, the resources are going to follow you. Let me repeat that. If you do the work, the resources will follow you. Every program that we started in my church, we didn't have the resources to do it, but I stepped out on faith and said, let's do the work. Once I stepped out on faith, the resources followed us to continue to do what was needed to do. And so that's my part and my contribution that I wanted to share with you guys on today. You on mute, LaShonda.
Well, don't run off just yet. Thank you so much for those words. We will be hearing from you all. You all, please populate the chat box with questions. You know, challenge each of each of us to come up with solutions, because our hearts are compelling us. Appreciate that, Doc. Dr. Kamal Khalil, you're up next.
In the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful. I'd like to thank this organization for allowing me to be on this panel. And I think there's a lot of misnomers in regards to my faith and mental health. We have individuals such as Tahla Asari, Abdul Hamid SheRay, who do great work in their communities to lead the effort against the stigma within our communities. It's very, from a historical perspective, Al-Razi from Baghdad, Iraq in 750 started the first mental health hospital. The Arab world and the Muslim world took a lead in medicine with Ibn Sina, leading the way and being the founder of modern day medicine. With that being said, it seems as if though other forms of pathological conditions, most notably cancer, heart disease, diabetes, has overtaken or consumed our lives, because those are theoretically can be seen in laboratory values. We can see a myocardial infarction on an EKG. We can see cancer based on imaging and lab values. So those things are alarming to us. But what is often overlooked is the conditions of mental health. Now, the large portion of the Muslim population within the United States is largely an immigrant population, first generation, now moving on to second and third generations. So I feel as if we're late to the table in addressing the mental health issues. Oftentimes, not the faith, but from each of our countries, we have a cultural manifestation that occurs that sometimes culture manifests and is greater than the faith itself, which is not how a Muslim should lead their life. But with that being said, the way of a Muslim and the way of Islam and what it promotes from Ibn Sina, from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, throughout the generations, prevention is better than treatment. Oftentimes we denigrate ourselves and we attempt to establish ourselves as people of modernity, people of science, where we always want to try to prescribe. We wait till it's too late. Within our community now, it's an unspoken evil that there is an opioid epidemic within our community. There is a mental health contaminant within our community. Does that hinder us from being progressive Muslims or being progressive citizens? No, it should not. These are challenges, because personally, we do not believe that God punishes on earth. God tests us on earth. Show me anywhere in the Bible, the Torah, the Vedas, the Quran, where God asks you to love. God never asked us to love. God commanded that we love. And if we love one another, we need to be able to help one another from the various faith-based communities and communities at large. With that being said, we have to understand that our mosque, our faith-based institutions, are not necessarily clinical settings. Our leadership, unfortunately, does not always have the academic prowess of psychology, of social work, of what exactly an opioid is to address those issues. But they are very important where they provide a gateway to treatment. Oftentimes, if I have a situation that I don't want to speak to my parents about, I have the freedom to go speak to my imam. And Pastor Penson said actually something very beautiful, in a non-judgmental way. Sometimes there may be things that I say that may shock my imam, they may shock my pastor, they may shock my rabbi, but his initial facial expression of being non-judgmental can lead me to success. You know, it's interestingly enough, there's this theory that every entities, when we're dealing with mental health and the opioid related issue, that we all work together. I found that to be actually a false correlation, because we often state that we work together, but really, I haven't really seen it in effect. Recently, with the help of Dr. Andrew King, we facilitated engagement from faith-based institutions to emergency rooms to therapy centers. The biggest problem we have in medicine, I'm disregarding politics, because as you can tell, I'm an idiot. But disregarding politics aside, the amount we spend in healthcare is insane. We could feed all of Africa. We could feed all of Yemen. We could feed all of Afghanistan with the money we spent in healthcare. We could provide fresh water, but we're overindulging and spending in healthcare because we treat, we don't prevent. So there's this program that we came up with that if an individual suffers from an opioid related issue or a mental health related issue, or they've attempted to take their life in whichever manner, that within the ER, now their issue is addressed. Instead of providing them Narcan and sending them on their way, why not send a peer coordinator? Why not send a social worker saying, listen, you're going to come back because recidivism with mental health and the opioid issue is extremely high. Look at the data, look at the statistics. Henry Ford, DMC, ProMedica, St. Mary's, you name it. ERs are constantly filled with recidivism of mental health and opioid related issues. Now we foster a relationship that if the person seeks help, we can take them straight from ER, straight to therapy. So there's no gaps in care. And everybody's involved. The spiritual leader is involved. The physicians are involved. The social workers involved. We are no longer providing sick care. We are providing health care. And when we understand that these types of programs are evolving within our community and with the incorporation of digital health, because everybody, we may not have food to eat, but we all have cell phones. Connectivity is no longer an issue. When we start thinking outside of the box, start really truly collaborating, we actually have a fighting chance. You know, the war against cancer is going well. The war against HIV went pretty well. And essentially, the war with mental health and opioids can be equally as well. I'm sorry if I took too much time. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamal. I have certainly, Dr. Khalil, I certainly appreciate you today for your words. Up next, we'll have Dr. Katrina Weich.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Thank you so much. I don't even know how to follow Dr. Khalil after that. Well, I'm coming to you all today from the perspective of both, actually combined, as a professional as well as someone in the community who's gotten involved with my faith community to bring prevention to the faith community. Earlier in our time together, Ms. LaShonda had mentioned that I am a co-developer of the Building Prevention with Faith Toolkit that's being promoted by Prevention First out of Ohio. With that toolkit, what we did was we really looked at what were things that were already going on in a faith community. So the first thing I want to say is that whether or not you believe that you're doing it or not as a faith leader or someone in a faith community, you may be a part of a congregation. You may not necessarily be the pastor or, serving in that capacity right now today on this training. One of the things that I'd like to make sure that I remind people is that the faith community is really already doing prevention. We do prevention in the faith community a lot of times just normally, and we don't even realize that we're doing it. So one of the things that I like to remind people is just to kind of like take a step back and think about some of those things that are currently going on in your faith community that serves along the lines of prevention. I was over our prevention and recovery support ministry in my congregation, where we really looked at the entire spectrum. So what are some of those things that we're doing with our youth-based programs in the congregation already? So there may be some programs that we can be a little bit more intentional in, where we integrated some prevention within our Sunday school. We also have like youth ministries. So, you have like the young women's youth ministry, the young men's youth ministry, dance, praise dance teams, and all those kinds of things. So those are also kinds of forms of prevention and in ways that you can integrate prevention inside of some of those kinds of things that were already going on. And then we also took that holistic approach with looking at the recovery support aspects of things. In our small group earlier, a lot of people talked about recovery support and needing those kinds of things. And, in a pie in the sky, we'll see a lot of recovery support taking place. And I know that a lot of times we have to be a little bit more open and soft when it comes down to recovery support and that relapse prevention with that too as well. But just in my working with the faith community, being able to integrate prevention intentionally into the works that's already being done has served to be very, very effective. And we've also looked at how can we partner with people outside of the congregation, because we talked about, looking at your limitations, right? So I heard Dr. Pinson talk about looking at your limitations. So when we looked at our limitations that we had within our congregation, we did say, okay, well, we may need to contract or reach out to people who are service providers who are actually doing these things to come in and do some programs and curriculums within our faith community to help bring forth these messages. So just knowing how to, see and reach out outside of the scope of things to bring people in is also one of the biggest things that we did too as well. So that's all, and I'll give a little time for someone else, and then a lot of what I'm going to say later. So I'll have the next panelists come if that's okay, and that they can go ahead and give a little bit of what they do in their faith community too as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Weiss. I appreciate it. Up next, we have Mr. Young Onara from the great state of Oklahoma.
Hi, all. I will talk more on the state level as a founder of faith-based initiatives in the States, not from the provider perspective. I have some clergy background too. While I was in Africa, I was a pastor actually, but because of trouble back home, I had to come over to the United States, so I couldn't just really practice my profession because you have to go through the process here. So I just said, okay, let me first of all find a way to take care of my family first. So I ended up working for the States. But my passion has always been my calling has always been, and I think everybody that is in faith, is to bring God's love to people, no matter what we do. We use the tools, use our ministry, use our work, use our businesses, our fundings to impact people's life for better, so that they could see the love of God in our day-to-day lives. So when I came over here, there was this Office of Faith-Based Initiative out of SAMHSA. I think it was President Bush that started that initiative. And we had the office in Oklahoma here, but it was housed in a different agency. They didn't have any plan really. It was just one person. There was no concerted effort or intentionality about it. So I introduced to my agency, the idea of actually trying to work with that contact here in the States, in seeing how we can, intentionally involve the faith-based communities in our prevention work. It didn't really pan out well because that office didn't really have any funding. So what we did was to present our case to our state agencies board. And one of the members there also had that passion. So he worked with our agency. He contributed 50% of the funding, and we matched it up. And we were able to contract with faith partners. They're out of Texas. They did a lot of work with the ministers here. Their mandate then was to just go train the ministers, the leaders in the church, on substance abuse prevention. And at the end of the day, have a simple plan that they can submit to us. I will see if we can fund those plans. But as things will be, we never really got to funding anybody because that round of funding just went away. So a new round came. And we said this time around in 2018, we said this time around, we have a consistent funding, because that's another problem with working either in the faith-based community or anywhere else, is the sustainability, not just of the funding, but that is the thing, the sustainability of the funding. of course, they talk about sustainability of outcome, but actually is funding. So we said, we as an agency, we do have a consistent funding from the feds, which is called the block grants. So why not we look at that and use that some part of that money to intentionally engage the faith community. And when I mean engage, it's not that we are not engaging, we are just paying lip service. We never ever, I believe, you should put your money where your mouth is. It's not just ask the faith-based community to go change our side and you're not doing it, you're not providing for, you're not providing anything, resources for staffing and all those things. So while we're working on that, we got the STR grant and SOR grant. That is the State Opioid Response Grant. We said, okay, this is an opportunity to start, really funding before we think out how we're going to do that with the funding that is sustainable. And part of our prevention services then was called community outreach, and it's still called community outreach. We said, okay, this is how we will really get the faith-based communities engaged. But also, we also thought about how do we really address the society as a whole. Most of the time, we do prevention without really thinking it through, where we can get maximal impact. So we said, looking at Oklahoma as a state, what is the composition of Oklahoma? Who are these Oklahomans? Where do they belong? Where do they work? Of course, we know that in Oklahoma, the retail industry employ a lot of people. So if you approach the retail people, the retail businesses, and embed prevention there, you reach a lot of people, including families. We also said, okay, Oklahoma has a lot of campuses, universities, or they like their universities so much. Okay, if we can get across to the universities to that will and embed prevention there, that will be able to reach a great number of people. We also said Oklahoma is a faith-based state. At least we are called the Southern states. We said, okay, that means that we have to also get prevention one way or another embedded in the faith communities. And so forth and so on. And of course, schools. The issue then was, how do you engage the faith communities without being accused of being biased, who you are funding? Because the faith-based community, you have the buyer, you have the Muslim, you have the denominational, the churches, the Christians, even within the Christians, you have a lot of denominations. How do you really engage anyone from the state level without being called out? So we looked around, we did our research, and we were able to find a body that is open to all faiths, that is called the Oklahoma Conference of Churches. It's not only churches, they have the Muslim, they have the buyer, everybody is open. And we also said that even if they have almost everybody, but we have to look at the implication. Are they barring anybody from becoming a member? They said no, that everybody can be a member. So we were able to now contract directly with them like a sole source, because it will be very difficult to just contract with so many denominations. There are so many, different sectors of the faith community that you can't even reach out to almost everybody. So with that body, we contracted with them to now sort out within their own membership. They be responsible for opening up their funding to like mini grants to members of their organization, members of their conference. So that's what we did. And that was in 2018. I can also, and I believe maybe some of them are, some of the staff are here with this conference. I don't know if they are here already or if they're not. But if you see the link that I just shared with you guys, if you click on it, you will see that was the first thing we started doing with them. And today they have done a lot of work. Maybe when we come to the question and answer, session, I might be able to give more details. We started out with the opioids, but now we've actually graduated using the block grants funding to make it consistent over, it's like they will, as long as they do their performance, the performance is proven to us, they will continue to get funding. So that is part of the sustainability. So now they are doing also strengthening family programs. They have various sites. They are recruiting other other faith-based organizations to host, to use their places as sites to deliver those faith-based, strengthened family program among their congregants. So I think my time is up, but if anybody has any questions or want me to share resources with them, I can do that. Part of the thing we also did, we were able to also develop a kind of a faith-based toolkit for them for which they can use to work with. So if anybody wants that I can give it to Lashonda to share with everybody.
Thank you, Young. I certainly appreciate that. And we will make sure that when you all get a copy of the recording, the slide deck, that we will add the resources that have been shared in the chat box as well. And I think that this is a great resource. You all, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat box. And so that was my hope, is that we would see some questions. So you all take just a minute, think through, now that you have these doctors and a preventionist of the year in the room who's done this work in the faith-based, the faith sector, an opportunity to ask them questions. So please ask a question. So I see that folks are saying thank you very much, Young. I think I saw thank you to Dr. White. So everybody's appreciative of what we are hearing today. You all, if I don't see a question here, we also have a couple questions that we could ask the group. And so I'd like for you all to just jump in with your answer. My first question is, what are some of the successes that you haven't had a chance to talk about? And what are some of the lessons learned from partnering with the faith community and vice versa? So what was really a success? And then what was a lesson learned in working with the faith-based community, or the faith-based community working with preventionists?
Can I address that one from my perspective?
Or Khalil rather, or
can I address that real quick?
Oh, please do.
So it's fairly unique that sometimes you do recognize that that communication can be an issue, but it's unique to learn this coming from a more pathological than moving into mental health. It's the African American community has a high propensity of diabetes. There's cardiovascular conditions within Southeast Asia that doesn't usually affect other races as much, or ethnic groupings. One thing you learn working with faith-based institutions, white, Black, Cuban, Hispanic, Arab, whatever comes through our door, it seems as mental health and the opioid issues across the board, it affects everybody equally. And I think that's something that manifests through working together, through communications, and through understanding that although I'm of Pakistani origin and I have a Yemeni affiliation, or I'm African American, or I'm Caucasians, we still can have hard days at work. We can still have family issues. We can still face traumatic events. We can still have deaths, or we can just genuinely have low serotonin from a pathological perspective. It seems as if working with interfaith and seeing a diverse grouping of people, mental health affects us equally. And that's something that you wouldn't recognize unless you're in a grassroots situation.
I love that. He says it hits us equally. We're equally touched by this. You all, there's somebody in the audience named Gloria.
Every month. At this food drive, I work for Bay Area Council on Drugs and Alcohol, and we're located out of Houston. I work in Matagorda County. And I would provide them with giveaways, like with lunch bags, just different items with prevention messages on it, along with brochures that, talking about drugs and alcohol. And it was very well received for about 3 or 4 months. And then I noticed they were hesitant about letting me go back to, partner with them. So I asked them to please share with me and be honest, did I do something wrong, or did I offend them in any way? And she said, no. She said, it has nothing to do with you, but the recipients of the food boxes felt like we were judging them, and like we were insinuating that they had a drug and alcohol problem, and that's why they were needing to get food from us. So they didn't allow me to come anymore. Does anybody have some feedback on that, or how I could have overcome that?
I would like to speak on that. In fact, that's one of the comments that I was just about to make. Let me share some of my experiences from wearing a dual hat, from looking at it from the faith-based leader perspective as the parish, as well as the preventionist one who does this work. When I talked about earlier that when I see a need, I develop a ministry or develop a program. So for example, when I seen the data as it relates to suicide, when I seen the data as it relates to substance misuse, it really compelled me to do some work. Now, it was challenging, and the reason why it was challenging, because a lot of us in our faith organizations, it is centered upon tradition and taboos. So when you're talking about going before tradition and going before taboos, that's challenging within itself. But do not allow challenges to interrupt what you've been called to do. When I say it was challenges, it took me 2 years just to get a vote from the leaders of my church just to embrace this. Now here it is, we looking at the data every day. I mean, you looking on the news every day. And when I talk about that, I'm not the type of person, and the faith-based organization should never be the type of organization where I give the analogy of a proverbial ostrich. We can't just put our head in the sand. And all of these things are transpiring. It is our responsibility, as we stated earlier, according to scripture, faith without works is dead. Yes, we can pray. Yes, we believe. But like my grandmother used to always say, once you get up off your knees, you got to go do something. God's going to honor what you're doing. And so I would say to you that even though you have some challenges with that, continue to do it. And as long as you're continuing to do it, God's going to give you the resources to fulfill that gap or that need to be fulfilled in that community. Because we are need fulfillers. We are here to fulfill the need. There's a gospel song that the gospel artist wrote, say, I need you, you need me. We all need one another to survive. And so I believe that's what compels us to do this work, is that we need one another to do this work. And when we see a need, we go at it. Our hearts are so big. Like I stated earlier, here in the city of Detroit, I mean, the first 60 seconds of the channel 2 or 4 of our local news is challenges. And so I say to myself, what can I do? And so we gotta all ask ourselves the question, what can we do to combat or to curtail what these needs or what these challenges are? And as long as you got a heart to do it, as long as you're non-judgmental, resources gonna come your way to do what's needed to be done. And that's been a success of mine. But like I say, it was some challenges, because when once again, when you talking about going against the grain, going against tradition and addressing taboos, you're gonna have some challenges. But allow those challenges to continuously motivate you to fulfill whatever that need is. And that's what it has worked for me. And it has worked for our community, because we continue to have challenges. I'm working on another issue right now that I'm seeing some concerns that are being here in the city of Detroit, and it seemed like no one want to touch it, but the Lord did place it on my heart, so I got to touch it. And so I would say, just keep doing what you feel that is on your heart to make a difference.
Yeah, can I contribute?
Can we give Dr. White? She was hoping to get in, and then Young, it'll be you. So we're gonna go to Dr. White, and then we'll go to you, Young.
Okay.
I also want to echo what what Pastor Pinson just said. It's about, taking that time. A lot of times things in the faith community, with working in the faith community, it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen instantaneously. I know we had it took almost 5 years before our congregation latched onto the idea of prevention, like being able to say the word prevention in the faith community without it being a taboo. Because, you know, as we spoke about earlier, there are so many taboos that we work within those constraints within the faith community. While we had the support from our senior leadership to move forward with addressing prevention, there were still people who weren't ready. The congregation itself wasn't ready to address prevention. So we had to do things a little differently. And it took some time, but you know, staying with the program and staying with the process, we were able to have people be a little bit more open to things. And even when it came down to suicide, talking about suicide in the congregation, that was the hardest barrier for us to break within our congregation, was to talk about suicide, because people weren't ready. And a lot of it wasn't that they weren't ready from the standpoint of they didn't see it happening within their communities or even within their families. It's just that if you talk about suicide and you talk about drugs and alcohol, anything mental health, behavioral health issues, it's all a matter of praying, giving it to God, and then it's done and over with. If you pick it up, then that's when it's going to come back and circle around. So you have to just leave it alone. And I come from a background where we believe in deliverance and that deliverance will come. However, knowing that, you know, you have to do some work with that. And sometimes you have to reach out and get some professional help to get some of those things taken care of. It took a while for our congregation to latch on to that idea. But once they finally did, and they were open and more receptive to that, because the message had to then come not just from us laity or middle leadership roles, it had to come from the pastor. It had to come from our bishop of our church. And once he stepped up on the pulpit and had a series of sermons that addressed those issues from the pulpit, then people were more apt to listen to what we had to say. So we were able to bring in trainings like mental health first aid for the congregation, to get people trained into that, and so that they can know and recognize the signs of when someone is going through a psychosis. And then we also brought in strengthening families, where we were able to do that series with a collaboration of other congregations from around the city of Cincinnati. We all came together and we held the Strengthening Families series at our congregation. We provided transportation, we provided food. We were able to get a grant to be able to do that, so that we were able to bring people to the table and go through that program and that process. So those were just some of the things that we were able to do. So we took it not only just within our congregation, but knowing that we had to have that support from the senior leadership, and also partnering with other congregations outside of ours, or other churches outside of ours, as well as looking at some of those other professionals to bring to the table. So it's looking in and outside of the house to bring in those resources and staying diligent. Because like I said, I'll be honest, y'all, I got to a point one time and I went to my bishop and I said, look, I quit ministry. I can't do this no more. People ain't coming to the table. I'm tired of sounding like a broken record. I've been doing this for years. I can't do this no more. And he looked at me, he said, Sister Katrina, if you quit, who gonna do the work? I said, I don't know, it ain't my problem. I ain't got time for it, ain't my problem. And he said, no, let's take a step back. Don't quit. You gotta stay diligent in this. And I stayed diligent in it, and we were able to make some changes. He asked me very pointedly, what do you need? What do you need from me? And we went back through. Here's the plan that we laid out. Here's where we're at. Here's what we need to go. Now, how can you help me get here, Bishop? This is what I need in particular from you. So we did that. He asked me to write him up a sermon or give him some sermon notes. I wrote him up some sermon notes. Next thing you know, when it was time to do it, I ended up being the one presenting the sermon. So, but then he had a series of sermons that came behind it. But it's just those kinds of things, really having that support from the leadership. And I'm not saying that there's not support from it, but having that support from the leadership and thinking outside of the box sometimes will help bring all of those things together. But you have to stay with it, like it was said.
I love it. Be diligent, stay
Oh,
with it. Make sure that you have support from leadership. All great information. Young, please share with us lessons learned.
yeah, just on the same thing there on Gloria's question, and I think my brother and sister actually completely addressed it, so I'm not going to talk more on that. But I always tell people, especially in the faith community, the one that I engage with, that don't just follow the way of the secular world interpreting data to both to your congregation and to people, because they want a situation whereby you create a problem that is so huge that is like everybody else is in deep water. What do I mean? I mean that the way we interpret data on the state level or the federal or all those things is always problem. We negate the positive side, the other side that is not problematic. So when somebody is thinking, oh, we're going to be painted bad, remember from the onset, always go with the positive side. You know, that we have these positive outcome programs that they do out of, I think, Montana, that instead of just looking at the problem, we look at also the not just the risk, but also the positive factors. So whenever we're trying to present data to our leaders or whatever, let's think more on the positive side. What are the good things that are already happening? Oh, this is a problem. Just like the parable of the lost sheep. Jesus had only just one person the sheep was missing, oh, that person. But does that paint the whole 99, bad? So it is how we present the case or how we present the problem sometimes to our leaders. And we are not wrong. That is how the way the world, in quotes, does it. Otherwise, they will say you don't have a problem and you will not get funding. So we should always think of the positive side when we are trying to engage our leaders and also get them to look that way and say, look, this data says a lot, but remember the parable of the lost sheep, even if it is one person. Just like my sister is saying, nobody is coming. We don't judge programs sometimes, especially on the first perspective, on how many people. Jesus gives one. If one person attends the program, it's a success. So we should not be discouraged, because that one person can change the whole nation, just like Apostle Paul was able to change the world. So even if it is one person that shows up, rejoice and just focus on that one person. Okay,
I
sorry.
appreciate you. I appreciate you. You all have a hard question, you all. So my hard next question is we know that everybody in prevention is not a part of a faith community. And so, however, we want those preventionists who are not a part of a faith community, who are non-believers. What's a tip that you have for those who are outside of the faith community, the particular faith community that they'll be focusing on, or people who are not of faith, but they still want to engage in prevention work? How do we get them? And they want to engage in prevention work with the faith community, because we talk about the importance of them being at the table. So how do you get them to the table, and how do we preventionists who are not those of faith? Do you guys understand my question?
Yeah, it's like in marketing. You have to, if you want to get somebody on board, first of all, start with what you can do for them. Based on what their profession wants to achieve or their program wants to achieve. Just look at this. I can do this to get you to do this. So if you can sell by making them believe that you can help them move or achieve what they are supposed to do, that is a starting point. You understand what I mean? Because you can't just get somebody on board unless there is something in it for them. I don't mean that they sell out, but they have a goal. So if you see how you can help them achieve their goal, why you also present yours and work like as a partners. The other thing I wanted to mention is this. Whenever you want to talk to the leaders, because the way we set up our things are not by the counter to the way they do their things, always seek their opinion. Okay, how can we tweak how we collect data, what we say in the data. I think the Native Americans have been very successful in trying to do that, because the way the data is picked or the recommendations of the program does not really address their needs or their culture or the way they see outcomes. So we should also always make sure that we get the input of those people. Okay, let's discuss. What are the gray areas in this place? What do you suggest? Okay, is there a compromise how we can, so that we can work together? We should never take a stand and say, oh, we have to collect this data this way, blah, 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 blah. We should always engage each other, to see how we can still fulfill the requirements of whatever funding, but be able to meet each other's needs.
Excellent. I appreciate that. In the chat box, we have Tasha Wilkerson, who said, if not about faith, everyone can embrace a message of love. That's what our faith is about, the holistic health, mental and physical. Anybody else from our panel? I see Dr. Khalil, and then we're going to go to Dr. Penson.
I saw an interesting sign on a church that once said open between Easter and Christmas. And I thought that was very relevant. Oftentimes, people don't realize that churches, places of worship are open not 24/7, but they're open the majority of the time. One, we may need to have a better message to the non-faith-based community and vice versa. A quick response to Sister Gloria, and I know this is a non-judgmental, but I'm going to judge myself coming from a healthcare perspective. Gloria brought up something very interesting, and I think that faith-based institutions can fill this gap, because these are gaps in care from a medical perspective. With that being said, say I'm a single mother, I'm a single father with three children, and my annual income is $24,000. After I'm done paying my bills, I have the electric bill left, or I have the ability to buy healthy food. I'm stuck with a conundrum with my kids. What am I going to do? I'm going to pay my electric bill and buy some Cheetos and Faygo for my kids. Thus, what I'm essentially stating is the social determinants of health are highly promoted, but it's not understood and not practiced. There's financial gaps, there's food insecurities, there are food deserts, there are academic insecurities. All these things play a role into a person's mental health. At a faith-based level, I don't understand why faith-based institutions are not microcosms of healthcare settings. Why not provide that academic training? Why not provide a food pantry? Why not provide the ability of financial advising? Because I think God takes our good deeds, our bad deeds, our food, takes everything into account when he judges us. Ibn Abbas narrated that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, stated that he is not a believer whose stomach is filled while the neighbor to his side goes hungry. Food insecurities, financial insecurities, academic insecurities, all these types of things play a role into our mental health. Engaging these from a faith perspective and spreading the love takes the burden off healthcare facilities, makes insurance companies happier because they don't want to pay for this type of nonsense because essentially they're greedy, but it provides us an avenue to connect at every level.
I'm sorry, I'm just laughing and just seeing truth in my head. So,
Me too,
so much,
me too,
Dr.
LaShonda.
Khalil.
I'm thinking.
I know. I just love him.
Just amazing. Dr. Penson, you're up next. So what's
Okay.
a tip that you have?
The tip that I have, let me say it like this. The only prerequisite to work with my team is that you just have love and you're willing to serve. So irrespect to what the organization is, irrespect to the ethnicity, the nationality, or the faith, the only prerequisite is the willingness to serve and love. Because if you're serving and if you're doing it in love, irrespect to where all of the different labels are, we are here to help one another. That's why I brought out that song earlier today about that gospel artist who, I believe his name is Hezekiah Walker. I need you, you need me, we need one another to survive. We all need one another. And I would say this is that the message is always the same, but the methodology and how we deliver it has changed. It has changed tremendously. When you look at the traditional settings of our faith settings, the message is the same. It's just the methodology of how we administer and what we implement and what we do to confront today's challenges. And I would say to that, to answer your question, LaShawn, is just centered upon those two principles. I believe is just serving and serving out of love. And if you're willing to serve and serve out of love, that's what makes a difference. Society has showed us that's what makes a difference. History has showed us that's what makes a difference. When you are willing to serve in the capacity of, let me rephrase this, of unconditional love. When you are willing to serve in the capacity of unconditional love and render the service that need to be rendered, that's when things happen. And so hopefully that gives us some perspective on your question that you asked.
I appreciate you. I see that Dr. Hunt, an audience member, has her hand raised. Please open up the mic. Dr. Hunt, you've got the floor.
I appreciate you and thank you so much for this courageous conversation that we're having today. Courageous conversation requires that we honor it by implementing action plans, right? And so here in New York, what I have been able with my colleagues to do is, I put everything around the words of Desmond Tutu in terms of, he said, my humanity is bound up in your humanity, for we can only be human together. Right. So what we do is we come from that perspective. You don't have to believe what I believe. You just have to know that you have a vital space, a vital component for humanity. And so I think if we function from that perspective, have that be the foundation. This is our world, and we create the societies that we have. And in fact, we repeat what we don't repair. And so if all stakeholders come together at the table to have the same mission of it's for humanity, whether you call my God, God, or Allah, or whomever it is that you worship, we all know that the Creator wants everyone to be well. The Creator wants us all to prosper and be in good health. And so because of that, we've been able to rally and get things done. Everything isn't perfect, but I have every type of community that's like, Dr. Hunt, what is it that you need? Why? Because at the foundation, it's for humanity. I thank you for this time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hunt.
Let's not take away what we've heard today from. I don't want the prevention specialist or the prevention person not to have these blinders on and say, well, they're talking about wellness and health, but you know what, you are in prevention. That's part of what we do in substance misuse prevention. We're part of that family of wellness and health. And so take off your blinders and see how your role can play in what you're doing and listening to these awesome faith leaders and this awesome audience who's showing and opening a way to really understand how faith, prevention, wellness, and mental health all play and is important to play in this role. This is a big stance, as Dr. Hunt just said. You all at the Southwest PTTC is taking a big role in having this conversation, because normally it doesn't happen in this setting. And so to take on this challenge, I asked my prevention friends and my prevention colleagues to take off or they're not talking about how to get rid of opioids, or they're not talking about how to deal with tobacco. We are talking about it because it's about a human behavior, reducing the stigma and talking about a human behavior to engage folks. You have to engage folks first before you can do anything else.
Right.
And so I just wanted to throw that in. This has been an awesome conversation. Thank you.
Thank you all. So you all, we're at we're into some of our other time.
Yes.
But I don't want us to leave without you all. And I know this is tough for folks in the faith community, but I'm going to pressure you. I'm going to pressure you right now with simply giving us about 20 seconds apiece. And the 20 seconds I want you all to spend is talking to us about this theme that we've seen across all of you, whether you work for the state and you're young, he's talked about love. Dr. Khalil has talked about love. Dr. Penson, Dr. White talked about love. And so within the last few, you just in 20 seconds, give us a word of encouragement, a word about love, and how we can partner with prevention and how prevention can partner with the faith community. in the space called love that you all have each talked about. I see Dr. Penson's mouth is, well, Dr. Khalil's on the screen. So let's go with Dr. Khalil and let's then go to Dr. Penson.
It's my job as a person of faith to engage people, and it's my person. And since I'm on this panel, I ask everybody to judge me, not judge me negatively, judge me in a positive manner. You know, sometimes when we speak on panels, the greatest disease is not mental health, but for me, it's ignorance and arrogance and ignorance. So this may get to me, but since I'm speaking on this panel, challenge me. What am I doing to make that difference? What am I doing to engage people within my community and other communities as well? You know, I think I'm the greatest advocate for myself, and you should believe that you are the greatest advocate for yourself. So spread that love. I'll tell you, I'm not the smartest guy, and Cara knows me. I'm going to end with this. I'm not the smartest guy. But when we talk about a message of love, it's good to know what you don't know. I don't know much about history, don't know much about biology, don't know much about a science book, and don't know much about the French I took. But I do know that I love you. And I know that if you love me too, what a wonderful world this would be.
All right.
Brother Kali, you should have sing the song.
Right.
I don't know what song you're talking about. This is how I normally talk.
I love it. See, Dr. Griffith is also loving it. Hey, Dr. Penson, you're up, and then we're going to move. 20 seconds.
I just want to take it from this perspective. I want to just say it just like this. I'm not whole until my brother and sister is whole. I'm not healed until my brother or sister is healed. I'm not smiling until my brother and sister is smiling with me. We all in this together. We are here to be a blessing towards one another. And that's my motivation. And I believe that should permeate into the hearts of everyone, that we can't smile until my brother and sister smile. I can't kick my feet up in the lazy boy chair until my brother and sister is able to kick their feet up into the lazy boy chair. All of us got work to do. And I believe that this should motivate us to continue to do that work out of unconditional love.
Thank you so much. Young Onara, and then 20 seconds, Young.
You know, I'm not an orator like my brothers, sisters, but I did the Bible study this morning, and one thing that jumped out at me was the same love. And what I got, the message that I actually got, which I think everybody should have in mind all the time, is that love itself seeks out opportunities or sees every opportunity to express itself, but not to take offense. Because if you really love, even the thing that is supposed to be offensive in the world, you know, the eyes of, and it truly might be offensive, you will see it as opportunity to actually show that love. Love does not just express itself in love when you see another loving situation. Actually, it works best in negative situations. That is what we actually are called to do. And the person that I believe in, that is what he did. He was seeking opportunities to just love, bless people. And part of our work should be that. We shouldn't look at our population of focus or whatever we'll call it, or communities, or or even people that are having challenges with the negative. I see it as an opportunity to express that love that God has called us to do, or commanded us, as Brother Kali reminded us, commanded us to do.
He did.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then our final word before we go into talking more about strategies and prevention comes from Dr. Weiss. 20 seconds, Dr. Weiss.
20 seconds. Faith in action is love. Love in action is service. Going right back to the quote that one of the quotes that Tracy opened up with. That is the way that I kind of think about things when it comes down to prevention and work within the faith community as both a prevention professional as well as a layperson within my congregation, looking at that service providing. One of the biggest things that I can say that we can do, simplest thing that we can do, is connect with 5 people, whether or not it's 5 youth, 5 older adults, or a combination, but connect connect with people intentionally and show and spread love and help them with filling in that gap of things that they need. That's prevention all day long, y'all. Doesn't have to be textbook, doesn't have to be scientific. It just has to come from a place of love and understanding, non-judgmental.
I love it. Thank you all so much. I appreciate this panel. I'm giving you all a hand. It's been just a wonderful conversation. And so I certainly appreciate getting an opportunity to be a part of this conversation. We're going to see Dr. Khalil.
I think it'd be wise if we left our contact information, because if we really want to work together, we should be able to get a hold of one another. Just saying.
Just saying. Just saying. Dr. Khalil's just saying. Please add your contact information.
And LaShonda, there's an awesome quote by Dr. Reverend Dana Mayfield, who said, "I'm sitting here with tears of joy for all of your words. Thank you. I can't unmute because there's a horrible alarm going off in our building." But that's just a powerful way of thanking you, showing that. And Tiffany says, "Perfect love casts out fear of judgment, of shame, and guilt. Open doors to receive." Tasha says, "Connect intentionally." So I just wanted to make sure that brought about the comments of the last panelists.
You all, this panel that we have, these folks, certainly those who want to share their contact information, if you all want to connect with them at another time, we'll add that to all of the materials that we're sending you. Thank you so much, Dr. Khalil, for reminding us that we have an opportunity to do that. I certainly appreciate that. Up next, we're going to go to our slide deck. But before we get to that slide deck, and we just have a little further to go, let's just take about a 3-minute stretch break, right? We're going to take 3 minutes from whatever time it is in your house or in your office, 3 minutes. And then we're going to come back and the slide deck will be up and we'll have our first speaker, which will be Dr. Katrina White. All for coming back. We're at the last part with Dr. White. She's going to share with us, share a bit about prevention programming in a faith setting. And so, Dr. White, we'll have the slide deck up in just a moment.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for sticking through to this last portion of the day, where we will be talking about and discussing prevention programming in a faith-based setting. There are so many different things that we can do to implement prevention programming in a faith-based setting. And, sometimes it looks a little bit, different, right? Because we may have to do some adapting and those kinds of things. But what I would like for us to, continue to talk about today, and feel free to chime in as we go through our time. But one of the first things I want to kind of talk about is look at these strategies that can be created to within the faith-based community. So they're all interrelated to one another. Now, when we look at it from a community environment, the social, cultural environment, the physical environment that we build around in the communities, including the economic environment. So all of these are comprehensive approaches that are a part of what we do around prevention, what we can do in our communities. So looking at the first circle there with equitable opportunities. So some of these are strategies that allow us to have the opportunities for you and young adults to have an impact within our faith-based community, right? So not only in the community, but outside of the congregational walls. This, I know, I'll go on to share some of the examples that we have from the work that I did when I get to the individual slides. But this also looks at helping the community attempt to heal from some traumas that may exist within that community, whether or not it's in the faith community, because y'all, let's be honest, sometimes there's some church hurt. I just met with a group of my pastor friends on Saturday, and we were talking about some different things that we would like to do within our faith community, because we all have different backgrounds that we come from, AME, Christian, non-denominational. So we all have some of, some different faith walks that we have, but we all know one thing in common is that, we have people who are hurting. So we're looking at some things to do around trauma healing in the communities, and look at improving the health and wellness of communities, as well as resistance of pressures of gentrification that we see that has been taking place, in the dislocation of people in some of our communities. Then the next thing that we look at with this strategy is we want to address the environment that focus on improving the physical environment, right? So we want to reduce the deterioration that we see in the communities, creating some of those safe spaces and positive interactions for youth. So reclaiming some of those spaces. There may be a park that's near the church or the place of worship that may need to be revitalized. So how do we look at some of those things? How do we make sure that our environment is appealing and it's worth supporting the healing process of the community and of the youth and adults? And then we look at people. So we're also looking at how, we have those social and cultural environments there, and they are encountering different things, right? So we have, again, the community trauma, we have some dysfunction that may be there and present. So we want to find those ways of really supporting and healing people and connecting them to the services and the providers that they should need, and shifting those norms, right? So we talked earlier about how within our congregation, sometimes it's a little taboo to talk about certain issues, but we want to shift those norms where it's okay. And we're not stigmatizing people when they're coming to the table or when some issues are coming to the surface, because at the end of the day, we want everyone to be healthy and whole. So some of these most powerful successes come from having, some youth development programs. We have violence prevention and health promotion programs that can be put into what's already existing in a congregation. So remember, y'all, earlier I said that one of the biggest things that I like to talk about is that, when we think about faith communities, a lot of times they already have these working within the community. It's already in existence. So we want to build upon what they already have, instead of, saying, hey, you don't have these things. We want to look at it from a place of assets. An asset being what they already have going on, and how can we build upon it. So when we look at equitable opportunity, so one of the things that in my congregation, what we did with along the lines of this, there are a couple of things, but two of the things I want to talk about is, one, we had those opportunities, we were able to come and participate in Financial Peace University. So that was allowing people not only from our congregation, but outside of the congregation to come in and learn about money management. How do you clean up and repair your credit? How do you start saving? So we had a almost a year-long series where people came together on a monthly basis. They came up with financial goals, and we helped them achieve their financial goals. And we gave them the principles and talked through what those things look like. How does financial peace look like? And so there's a whole program that we went through with that, using Dave Ramsey's kinds of materials that he had. And another thing that we also do within a congregation is provide tutoring for youth from, at all ages, across the span of all ages, tutoring for youth. If you're in school, it doesn't matter if you're in elementary school or if you're in college. If you need the tutoring, we were able to get some tutors available to help tutor you through those subjects that were pretty difficult. So those are just two things that we did along those lines, mentoring programs, those kinds of things. So I would like to hear from you. Put it in your chat. What are some of those things that you're seeing that's already happening within the faith community along the lines of equitable opportunities that's already there and present? Maybe it's something that you're doing with a faith community, or something that that a faith community is already doing. What are some of those things? Some of those programs that may already be in existence? Don't be shy.
Come on, y'all. Let's open up them chats. We ain't done yet. Somebody said community
Community organizing to
Yes.
provide job training. Yes, yes, yes. The job training that is key, because a lot of times people are lacking those skills. So we do need to create that opportunity where people can come in and get some job training. Yes. If your congregation, or if you know of a congregation that has the spacing, you know, you can partner with them to say, hey, you know, we can provide some computers. Maybe we could do some skills training on computers for people who may be lacking some of those skills. Those are some things that we have done to help build up the economy within our congregation, within communities. Yes, keep them coming. I like to be engaged. I like for some participation. So I'm going to be calling on folks to put some things into the chat. So putting pressure on our local elected officials to use the latest federal monies in those areas. Yes, we can certainly do that. Put the pressure on there. They like to come to us when they want to get that vote. So let's come to them when we need something to come take place within our congregations. And those are some of the things that we want to have take place in our congregations. We want to build up the people so that they can be stronger, so that they can be able to be self-sufficient in the communities. Yes, we'll keep those things coming. So what are some other things that we look at? So some of the other things that we look at is the place. Is the place available? Is it safe? Is it an accessible area where people would like to come? So one of the things with my congregation is a nice sized congregation. And one of the things that we did was there was a park that was next to us. Beautiful park, but it was missing something. It was missing the rims for the basketball hoops. Now you tell me, how do you expect the youth to stay off the streets, to stay out of trouble, if you got this beautiful facility, this beautiful park, but you don't have any hoops for the youth to be able to play basketball with? So one of the things that we did was we worked with the city. We worked with the city to get those hoops put back up on that court, because that was one of the ways that we were able to help keep youth off the streets and engaged, right? Is by helping them see other opportunities that they can get involved in the community with just something that's simple, putting basketball hoops up. So that helped them curb some crime that was in the air, right? We also did some ministry work where we went outside of our congregation and we cleaned up the community, picking up trash and that kind of thing. Form of ministry. So a lot of people look at that like, how are you doing prevention with that? Because one of those things that we were able to do was now talk with people about, you know, what we were doing, what's going on within the congregation, how we're helping the youth, some of those things, those light things that people like to see. When they see you out doing something in the community, you care about me beyond your church walls, then it's more, people are more apt to want to be involved with the efforts that you're doing. And I'm not talking about coming to the church to sit in the church. I'm talking about coming to the church to be involved, coming to the church to learn. As we know through research, faith communities is one of the biggest one of the biggest assets that we have, protective factors that we have in prevention. Because people of faith and people working within the faith, they have that opportunity to be grounded with their faith traditions. So some of those are some of the things that we did around place. What are some of the things that you've done or that you've seen take place around place in the faith community? What have you done? What are some of those things that you see out there? Go on and keep them coming. So we want to, because part of that is making sure that we bring people to the fold and being in a safe place, a safe environment, providing them transportation, or, you know, saying, hey, you know, we want to improve the quality of life here in our community. So those are some of the things that we can do too as well. Place. And then when we look at people, we want to rebuild those social relationships. Some of those intergenerational relationships sometimes aren't there, right? Nowadays, there's a lot of times where we don't have that opportunity with youth and older adults to have conversation, to come to the table together, right? So a lot of times, and when you think about the faith community, that's the only place where you have every generation together at one time. And how beautiful is that, to have everyone together at one time and to bring them together to be able to talk and to work through some things together. That's where you have like the richest history taking place. That's where you have some of the greatest innovations coming to full circle, because you have everybody right there at the table. And a lot of times it's about listening to what's there. So some of those things that you can have is some intergenerational dialogue nights in the faith community, where maybe it's some conversation that's taking place, some mentoring, some informal or formal mentoring taking place with the youth and adults to come together within that faith community. One of the things that one of the resources, should I say, that I absolutely love is this resource right here. I don't know if you guys can see this on the screen, but it's called Connect 5, right? It's finding the caring adults your teens need. They may not realize it, but they need these caring adults. So this is one resource that I have found to be a very good resource, as it talks about building some of those intentional relationships with young people. You just need 5. Just need 5. Connect to 5 people. Just need 5. But of course, we want to connect to more than just 5, right? And then when we also think about people, bringing people together, some of those things that we can think about is this resource right here, Pathways to Prevention. I'm not sure if this is still in print or not, but I do know that you can get this from some places online. But this is a prevention guide for youth leaders in faith communities. We are definitely looking at how can you provide some youth activities, prevention focused, inside the congregation. And then another one that I always talk about is from Search Institute, Building Assets in Congregations. And they have a whole training built around that. And I'm one of those trainers that's trained in building the assets in communities for Search Institute. But when you look at that, that's really taking that asset approach. What's already in existence within the faith community, and how can we be more intentional about integrating prevention within it? So that's what that whole curriculum looks at. And I heard someone earlier today that they like to see some things more around seniors and prevention. We always kind of forget about our seniors. And we know that our seniors also need to have some of those resources available to them too as well. And there's some resources out there. There's a guide to addiction prevention for seniors that we can look at and really bring some of those things into fold, where you have that information available. And it's a whole curriculum. How do you talk with the older adults about mixing medication and alcohol? We don't like to think about that happens, but sometimes it does happen. So how do we talk about that? How do we talk about some of those things? Because we know that once adults get older, then sometimes we kind of do things a little differently. And we have to take a step back and look at some of those things. So then also, okay, wait a minute, I think I went too many slides. So then I also want to talk about what can the faith community do? So we can establish some of those collaborations, right, to promote community level strategies while rebuilding the community social networks. So we want to create some of those community level strategies. So not only are we talking about things that are here within our congregation that we can do, but how can we take some of these same kind of strategies and do them out in the community? So one of the things, and I know this question came to us, well, what if you have a non-believer who wants to do things with a congregation, who wants to be involved with the faith community? It's about taking that approach of, hey, we all have, like was mentioned earlier, we all have the same level or the same goal. We want to see healthy, surviving, thriving people in our community. So what can we do to help people survive, thrive? Oh, how about this? An enterprise. So what are some of those things that we can do? And if we can come together and just put some of those other things aside, because a lot of times I think that we get a little afraid to move forward because we may say, well, I don't believe what they believe faith-wise. Well, it's not about the faith at that point in time. It's about the people. And we all care about people. So we want to help people. So it's a matter of bringing forth a message. And as we said before, hey, what's in it for the faith community? What's in it for you? How can we create this a win-win situation? You come to the table and you identify who you want to work with, why do you want to work with them, and what can you bring to the table? And exactly what are you asking for them to do? What are you asking for them to do? You have to be very clear. Because like I said, when I met with my bishop and I told him that I quit ministry, and he said, no, you don't quit ministry. What do you need from me? And I gave him my top 5 things that I needed from him. And I was very, very clear about what I needed. I was able to get the things that I needed. I was able to get things done. And we were able to move the ministry forward. Now, did it happen overnight? No, it still didn't happen overnight. There was still some times that I'm the only one, or me and my ministry team, we were the only ones sitting inside of that classroom for whether or not it was a support group or educational service. We were the only ones there. However, we kept going back every week and being the only ones there until the people start coming, because that's what it's about. Staying diligent and people will start coming. But still being very clear about what you need and expect to have happen. So sometimes we do have to change the narrative about how we are viewing people in the community. A lot of times we're coming from a deficit, but we need to come more from the asset approach. What are those positive things that people are bringing to the table? What are some of those positive things that are already in existence that we can capitalize on? And honing in on those things, then we will see some of those deficits kind of go down, because people will prefer to hear about the positives than the negatives, especially when you're dealing with people in the faith community. And then you want to be that voice. You want to be that voice and allow other people's voices to be heard about what you're needing. Having that level set of knowing and understanding where people are at and their readiness, that congregation's readiness, that church's readiness of addressing some issues will also be very key. And another big piece that's on here is the cultural piece of things. We have to understand the cultural differences and identity of the congregation. Now, we may all think, okay, well, it's only one culture. No. There's always subcultures within a culture. So we have to be able to understand what those cultures are that we are working with. So a lot of times, instead of walking into the door and saying, hey, this is what I'm going to do for you, it's also a matter of, let me take a step back and understand the culture of your faith community or of your faith. That will also help you in your approaching of the congregation or the faith community. So what else can a faith community do? I think I've already talked about this a little bit, but being able to provide some of those guidelines on substance use and non-use. There are so many resources that are out there, but being able to use those resources and couple it with scriptural text and references is also very, very good. I talked about earlier how in my congregation, we were able to integrate what we were doing and wanted to do with prevention within our Sunday school. And we did that integrated within our Sunday school, not just with the youth, but all the way up to the adults. And we did talk about substance use and misuse. We did talk about mental health issues. And we used the scriptural context within it. So when there were Sunday school topics that we needed to talk about, we just looked at that topic and said, okay, well, this is how we can integrate prevention into this conversation. And this is how we can also provide them with the valuable resources that they will need coming out of these doors. And the beauty in that was that a lot of times our bishop came right behind us and did a sermon from the pulpit on the very same topic, using some of those very same points that we brought out in the Sunday school lessons. So those are some of the things that we can do, and how you can do some of those things as well.
Dr. Weiss?
Any questions? Yes.
Dr. White, we do have an awesome comment, and I think LaShonda did notice both of them, and we
Okay.
appreciate them for them. But they talked about positive action. They talked about mental health first aid, which you're very familiar with them as a
Yes.
way of getting folks involved with substance abuse as well.
Yes, yes, that is a very, very good good point. And some very good curriculums that can be used to get people involved with substance abuse and mental health issues. And the mental health first aid, you can partner with Mental Health America. This is one thing that we did in our congregation. We partnered with Mental Health America at one point in time and had over 30 people trained in mental health first aid from our congregation and the community, the surrounding community. They came to our location. They trained the people right there in the community, so we didn't have to go, somewhere else. And I know right now they're doing a lot of things virtually too as well. So that is a very great resource. Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, and there's a lot of nonprofit organizations that are funded in the state that will let us collaborate with faith-based organizations too. Yes, certainly. There are, a ton of resources that you will find with not only just from the state level, but also from the community level that would love to partner with faith communities to provide services or, resources to us well. Yes, definitely. Thank you for sharing, everyone. Okay, and okay, yeah. So I do know that some churches have provided some naloxone training in churches that they're working with and planning. Okay, so LaShonda, you're planning on doing that, and I do know that there are some congregations that have done that too as well. Oh, that was from Lisa, that have done that as well, with providing some naloxone trainings in their congregations. And I know a lot of times, and I want to say this, I know a lot of times people shy away from that. Naloxone trainings and thinking about syringe exchange and those kinds of things. I know when we started some of this work around the opioid crisis in my community, when I was in Ohio, in my community, we had this plan, this community level plan, and people were against syringe exchange and naloxone trainings. They didn't want to give out the naloxone, and they did not want to have a syringe exchange ban nowhere near the community. But what we had to do was really rally around and show what the impact of it was, for it and against it. We had meetings with community council and those kinds of things, and with other faith-based organizations and congregations and talking about it. It's all about breaking that stigma. We had to break the stigma that if you get this, then there's going to be all of these people who are addicted to drugs that's going to come and they're going to run our community. They're just going to be hanging out, and the list goes on and on and on. So with having some of those conversations, we were able to say, no, while we will have these things take place, these are the safeguards that we will have into place. And this is the benefit of having people trained in providing the naloxone and being able to disseminate it to the community. This is the benefit of having a syringe exchange, because we know that right here in this community where you think that people are not utilizing drugs or, intravenous drugs, they are. So this is the benefit of having this, because this is a hotbed right here. So we need to make sure that we offset some of that, some of the health issues that comes a part of that, because sometimes when we did the cleanups, we were picking up needles, while you're really not supposed to, but they were there. So, we had to, get those picked up and properly disposed of. So those are some of the things we have to think about and have some of those frank dialogues within our congregations and in our communities, with showing people some of those things. But there are so many different things that we can do within our faith communities, and what prevention professionals can do within a faith community to help bring forth the message. Because at the same time, at the end of the day, we want the same outcome. We want people to be healthy, happy, and whole, right? So in order to do that, we have to look at some of those prevention efforts that maybe the congregation is already doing and what we can bring to the table and integrate it into the fabric of the congregation. We don't necessarily need to change anything, but just integrate it. One of the other things that we did within our congregation as a way of integrating it, we had a youth ministry where young girls, they dance, they praise dance ministry. And when the girls came together, they came together twice a week and for their rehearsals. And one of the rehearsals, the leaders allowed us to come and talk with them about prevention from different subjects. So it may have been, we want to talk about bullying prevention. We may want to talk about hygiene, positive hygiene, and safe relationships, because a lot of times these girls were getting ready to enter into the dating world. So we want to talk about, safe relationships, healthy relationships, and what does those look like, and giving them some of those plans and strategies of, this is what I need to do for more assistance or for protection for myself. So those are some of the things, that we can think about. Really think about things from outside of the box sometimes, but while staying within the constraints that we have. And I do see that like Gail has said that, there's volunteers from a local faith-based recovery group in our area, that would be helping with the International Overdose Awareness Day and observance on August the 31st. That's great. And I know a lot of times we forget about our recovery support groups or ministries that are out there that could also help out when it comes down to prevention and those kinds of things, as long as they're not using the scare tactics. But they also serve as a great help when it comes down to prevention. Okay, and then some of the resources. So just to wrap it up, everyone, some of the resources that we have out there, again, we talked about mental health first aid. We talked about them a lot. We also have a program that we do, or environmental strategy that we do with through SheRay and Associates and TCJ Group, BAM BH. That's break the stigma, ask for help, make the call. That's helping people go through a strategy of really identifying those stigmas within the community. How do we address these stigmas within the community? And what can we do to continue to put some action into play in the community? So we want people to look at it from that perspective. And then we have faith partners. Faith partners, they do a lot of congregational team approach trainings where they help people look at how do we develop substance abuse recovery support ministries within our congregations. How can we bring people together? There may be some people, we've trained people all over the country with this model and this approach. And a lot of times, it's not just one denomination. We've been to so many different denominations or faith walks. I learned about an interdenomination. I didn't know that there was a such thing as interdenominations until a few years ago. But what we do is it doesn't matter, and we bring people together from various faiths, can be in one training setting. Because we've done it with Christians and Muslims and Catholics in one training setting where we talk about building recovery support, because it's all about that. We're all coming together, one place, one thing, about love and helping the people. So, and that helped bring together a coalition of faith communities in a particular area to continue to work through and talk through prevention or recovery support and support one another as they build their ministries out to the community. And then with Prevention First has the Building Prevention with Faith toolkit that I co-developed. So they have that, and they provide trainings for individuals and organizations and faith communities that would like to look at the more intentional way of developing or integrating prevention with faith within their congregations. Then you have SAMHSA. SAMHSA has all kinds of resources out there, and utilizing SAMHSA for many, many years. They have all kinds of resources. The list is too numerous to go through all the different resources that you'll find out there that can help within these efforts. One of the things that I do want to say is that with the adverse community experiences, so with looking at ACEs, That is so important because ACEs has been around for years, but we're just now giving it the name. But it's been around for years, and that research is so powerful and groundbreaking for us to really be able to look at that framework and think about how we can integrate and build more resiliency within our congregations and within the people that we encounter. And then the PTTCs, we also have them available, and they're bringing together some resources and powerful trainings across the country too as well. Okay. Does anyone have any questions, any comments? I know I kind of kept talking, but
Get
any
some
questions
comments.
or
Get some comments, Dr. Weiss, and some good ones. And Sister Gail is talking about volunteer from a local faith-based recovery group in her area. Is helping with International Overdose Awareness Day, and at the end of the month. And then there's a question. There's a question about what about resources for family members who have a loved one in active sort of substance use
addiction? Okay.
People look to their faith.
All right.
Oftentimes, and most of the resources are for the person who's misusing drugs and not family members.
Okay, so this is very important. Thank you for this question. This is very important. So there are some resources out there that can help with that. So you have, of course, you have like your anons and those kinds of groups that are available to come table, right? That's for the family members of someone who's struggling with an addiction, that they can give that kind of support to. A lot of times it's about being able to find those resources that are in your local area, to really be able to connect you to the right ones. But there are some national resources that are available, and I can send a list of those to you, or out to the group to make sure that everyone has those. But there are some national resources that are available that can connect family members to resources and programs. So one of the programs that we talked about that I did within my congregation, and I think one of the other panelists did it too as well. Strengthening Families. Strengthening Families is one curriculum that can be used to help family members who were working with someone, to help family members of someone that's addicted to a substance, right? So that's a curriculum that can be used to kind of like help them and look at those resources and be that kind of bridge for them. And there's some other programs that are out there like that too as well, that will allow families to have some of those kinds of connections. Strengthening Families is another one too as well. And I did see a comment a little while up where someone said, I get so sick of hearing it's not in my church. If it's not alcohol, the church would get it because they can smell it, but the substance misuse or abuse, whether opioids or illegal street drugs, they don't know how to recognize the problem. So being able to work with people to recognize the signs of addiction or substance abuse is treatment. So maybe partnering with a prevention professional, or maybe even a recovery support a treatment professional that can say, yes, I'll be willing to provide a overview of the signs and symptoms. Now, while it may not be 100% catch-all, but there's some of those resources that are out there and available. There's also another resource that I used to use, what adults need to know about kids and substance use. So while that's about youth and substance use, there's also some good things in there that can be pulled out for adults too as well. So that's really giving you some of those signs and symptoms to look for, being able to pull together a presentation to say, okay, I want to educate people about this. Now, here's one of the biggest things. I know a lot of times they don't want to come and necessarily sit and hear you talk to them about different things. Can you just give me some information? So one of the other things that we were able to get information out to our congregation to soften the doorway of being having people come to the table, because I had a lot of people come to me and say, oh, well, I don't need that. I'm not coming to that training. And these were ministers. These were ministers within the congregation that said that they don't need it. They don't need to know this. But one of the things that we started doing was really just softly putting information out in the foyer. So we have this, huge foyer with congregation and all these information racks. So we just politely put information out there, right? Tips to talking with your kids about drugs. Ways to know that things are going on. Some of the other things that we did was we had when we release our youth go out into the world, so graduation ceremonies and those kinds of things, celebrations, and praying over the youth before they leave out for college. We gave them some bags, some gift bags, and in these gift bags there was some information in here. Little bit of information about how to stay safe while you're on college campus. Some things, some tips about, these are things to look for. And if you find yourself in trouble, this is where you need to go. And for parents, how do you talk with your kids when they're going through those transitional stages in life? When some of those transitional stages are when they graduate from elementary school, going into junior high school, when they're going from junior high school to college, junior high school to high school and high school to college. So what are some of those transitions that we're looking for? Okay, I'm sorry, I got to go on and on. Tracy, I hear you trying to jump in.
I just wanted folks, I just want to say, Doc, I think you are doing a phenomenal job, and you got so many information. That biggest things come up about marijuana, so that's a big issue. But I think what you're touching base on about identify ways you want to collaborate, that's just some good first steps for folks to know, get the lay of the land. That's another thing that prevention folks should really know, that critical piece of knowing how you're going in, and I always use the word, I want folks to write this down, WIFM, and it's not a radio station. WIFM is that you always got to know when you're working with all kind of groups, especially faith groups, you got to know what's in it for me as a faith leader. WIFM. So you want to know what that's all about. And so you want to know that WIFM, that's right, what's in it for me. So you want to get the lay of the land, but you want to know about it. And as I said earlier, it's really about relationships. Do you have a friend of a friend who's part of that faith organization that you can invite to lunch, that you can have a conversation and talk about what you're doing and how it might can relate to some of the work that the faith community is doing? And so it's about, and I know everybody in this prevention field got friends who go to church. Somebody got to go to church. And so having that conversation about what you do and how you can figure out what the WIFM is for their church, and then how you can fit in without having to say, hi, I'm the prevention robot. It's not about that. It's about really engaging and connecting and providing wellness information to support those awesome communities and those faith organizations.
Exactly. Yes, thank you, Tracy.
I don't know if there's a next slide. Let me see.
The next slide is you.
Yeah.
Question and answers.
Any other Q's and A's for folks? We've come to that moment where I know we have to turn it back over to our trusty leadership of the Southwest PTTC, the co-director, LaShonda Williamson, but Jennings Williams, I'm sorry. But I just wanted to make sure that if you had any questions about the awesome presentation that Dr. Weiss has just provided to you, and these PowerPoints, I know Southwest PTTC has them for you and you'll be getting them. But if there's any questions, let us know. And if you got questions after this, send them in to Southwest PTTC and we'll respond to them after this as well. But on behalf of everything that you all have done, we thank you for spending your day in August with a group of 4 or 5 folks who are just trying to do the right thing and show some love. Love has been the key word today. There's some references for you, and I'll turn it over to LaShonda.
Hey, y'all, thank you so much. In just a moment, Elizabeth will be adding our evaluation link to the chat box. So please click the link and fill out our evaluation link. We certainly enjoyed having you all here today. We've got 2 more minutes. If you can just give me 2 more minutes. We're considering what's next. What's next for this conversation? Is the conversation over? You got it, let's go. Or are you all interested in perhaps a community of practice or another opportunity to talk about the things that we've talked here today? I mean, we've talked about love and service. We've talked about prevention strategies that can be used. We've talked about addressing stigma. What's next? Do you all need additional resources? And if so, if you need resources, what resources would you like to see developed by the PTTC? Is there another training out there? Then what is it? So what we are looking for are some help in figuring out what's next. I also want to know if we continue this conversation through a community of practice. So that's a community of folks, a tight community of folks who get together to talk about what this engagement with the faith community looks like. I mean, we have already such a great wealth of knowledge here in this group, but also of those who are in the panel and those presenters. Man, it would be excellent to just sit there one-on-one and talk some more with each of these individuals. And so, what's next?